The prototype Vanguard X7 sat gleaming under stadium lights, sleek as a predator, silent as a tomb. Investors shifted in their leather chairs. Iris Vaughn stood at the podium, microphone in hand, her confident smile starting to crack. She pressed the ignition button again. Nothing. Just a low dying hum, like a patient flatlining in front of a room full of surgeons who'd already written the death certificate. Her company's future was bleeding out on polished concrete, and no one in the room knew how to stop it. Then a man in a wrinkled jacket slipped through the back door, a sleepy 6-year-old clutching his hand, and everything was about to change. If you want to see how one overlooked father turned a billion-dollar disaster into his second chance, stay with me until the end. And hey, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see just how far this story travels. Caleb Hayes wasn't supposed to be there. He'd planned to swing by the Harrison Meridian Hotel's service entrance around 4, grab the envelope with his overdue payment from the loading dock supervisor, and be gone before anyone in a suit noticed. 2 months of contract work on a fleet of promotional vehicles, and the accounting department still hadn't cut the check. Typical. But his daughter's daycare had called at 3:30. Maya had a fever, nothing serious, just enough to send her home. So now he was an hour late, stuck in traffic on the 405, with a groggy kid in the back seat asking why her forehead felt hot. "It's your body fighting the bad guys, sweetheart," Caleb said, glancing at her in the rear view. She was 6, dark curls stuck to her temples, clutching the stuffed giraffe she'd named Gerald. Like superheroes. "Do I get a cape?" "Maybe tomorrow." By the time he pulled into the underground garage, the loading dock was locked. A handwritten sign taped to the gate. "Event in progress. Deliveries rescheduled." Caleb leaned his forehead against the steering wheel. Of course. The Vanguard Innovations product launch. He'd seen the banners going up all week while he'd been elbow-deep in engine grease, recalibrating ignition sequences on vehicles that would never make it past the press junket. Maya coughed softly. "Daddy, I'm tired." "I know, Bug. 5 minutes, I promise." He parked, scooped her up, and headed for the main entrance. Maybe he could talk his way to a manager, get the check, get out. The lobby was chaos. Camera crews, tech journalists with lanyards, security guards and earpieces forming a human wall between the elevator banks and a set of double doors that opened into the grand ballroom. Through the gap, Caleb caught a glimpse of the main floor. A stage, spotlights, a gleaming vehicle under a silk cover, and a sea of people in tailored blazers holding champagne flutes like they were at a wedding, not a product demo. "Sir, the event is invitation only," a guard said, stepping into Caleb's path. Young guy, early 20s, trying to look tough. "I'm not here for the event. I need to speak to someone in finance. They owe me. You'll have to come back tomorrow." Caleb felt Maya's weight shift against his chest. She was half asleep already. "Look, I've been waiting 2 months for a paycheck. I just need 5 minutes with tomorrow." Caleb opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. The guard wasn't being unreasonable. The whole building was locked down for whatever spectacle Vanguard Innovations was putting on. He turned to leave, resigned to another night of explaining to Maya why dinner was pasta again, when a voice crackled over the ballroom's speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're ready to begin." The crowd inside quieted. Caleb hesitated. He could see the stage now, see the woman stepping up to the microphone. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, navy blazer, the kind of posture that said she'd been trained to command a room. Iris Vaughn. He recognized her from the tech blogs Maya's babysitter scrolled through during nap time. Self-made entrepreneur, Stanford dropout, youngest CEO to take a company public in the autonomous vehicle sector. The media loved her. "We are about to witness history," Iris said, her voice smooth, rehearsed. "The Vanguard X7 is not just a car. It's the future of transportation. Zero emissions, fully autonomous, and thanks to a revolutionary new energy cell, it has a range of 800 miles on a single charge. No other vehicle on the market can match that." Applause rippled through the room. Caleb shifted Maya to his other arm. He should leave. This wasn't his world. He was a mechanic, a contractor, a guy who fixed things other people broke. But something about the setup nagged at him. He'd worked on Vanguard vehicles before. If this was the X7, then it was built on the same platform as the prototypes he'd been servicing all month. And if that was the case, Let's see it in action, Iris said, her smile widening. A technician stepped forward and pulled the silk cover away. The crowd gasped. The Vanguard X7 was stunning. All curves and carbon fiber, matte black with chrome accents, LED strips tracing the undercarriage like veins of light. It looked fast, even standing still. Iris walked around to the driver's side door, which opened automatically as she approached, and slid into the seat. The interior was visible on the massive screen behind her. Leather, touchscreens, ambient lighting that shifted from blue to green. Now, Iris said, her voice amplified through the car's external speakers. Let's take her for a spin. She pressed the ignition button. Nothing happened. The crowd murmured. Iris pressed it again, harder this time, her smile tightening. The dashboard flickered. A low hum started, then died. Caleb felt his stomach drop. Technical difficulties, Iris said lightly, though her jaw was tense. Bear with us. A man in a Vanguard polo shirt jogged onto the stage, tablet in hand. He leaned into the car, tapped something on the center console. The hum started again, louder this time, then cut out with a sharp electronic whine. The crowd shifted. A few people pulled out their phones. Caleb saw a journalist in the front row typing furiously. Maya stirred against his chest. Daddy, what's wrong with the car? I'm not sure, Bug. But he had a pretty good idea. The technician stepped back, shaking his head. Iris climbed out of the car, her smile gone. Another technician rushed over, then a third. They huddled around the open hood, speaking in low, urgent voices. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Caleb caught fragments of conversation, embarrassing, unprepared, typical startup. Iris stood to the side, arms crossed, her expression locked somewhere between fury and panic. This is a disaster, someone muttered near the door. Caleb agreed, but not for the reasons they thought. He looked down at Maya. She was dozing again, her cheek pressed to his shoulder. He should take her home, give her medicine, let her sleep. Forget about the check, forget about the car, forget about all of it. But his feet didn't move. Because he knew what was wrong with the X7. He'd seen it before, twice, on the prototypes. A misalignment in the energy cell's integration module. The engineers kept overriding the calibration settings, chasing faster boot times, not realizing they were destabilizing the entire ignition sequence. He'd flagged it in his reports, sent them to the project lead. Never heard back. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? Can you fix it? Caleb almost laughed. It's not my job. But you know how. She wasn't wrong. Iris Vaughn was back at the microphone now, her voice steady but strained. We're experiencing a minor delay. Our team is working on it. Please, enjoy the refreshments while we resolve this. The crowd didn't move. They wanted blood. Or at least a spectacle. Caleb saw one of the investors, older guy, gray suit, arms crossed, lean over to whisper to his colleague. The colleague shook his head. They both looked disgusted. This wasn't just a failed demo. This was a company's credibility dissolving in real time. Caleb glanced at the security guard who was watching the stage with a mix of secondhand embarrassment and schadenfreude. Then he looked back at the car, at Iris, who was now speaking quietly with one of the technicians, her hands gesturing sharply, at the investors, already halfway out the door. He thought about the unpaid invoice in his truck, about the stack of bills on his kitchen counter, about Maya's fever and the pediatrician visit he couldn't afford this month. Then he thought about the X7 schematics, which he'd reviewed a dozen times because he was meticulous and bored and good at what he did, even when no one noticed. Stay here for just a second, okay? He said, setting Maya down gently in one of the chairs near the door. She nodded, eyes half closed, Gerald the giraffe tucked under her arm. Caleb walked toward the stage. The security guard stepped in front of him immediately. Sir, you need to... I can fix it, Caleb said. The guard blinked. What? The car. I know what's wrong with it. Sir, this is a private event. You need to leave. Just let me talk to someone. I've worked on these vehicles. I know the platform. The guard's hand moved to his radio. I'm going to have to ask you to... Wait. The voice came from the stage. Iris Vaughn was looking at him now, one eyebrow raised. She stepped down from the platform, her heels clicking against the polished floor, and walked over. Up close, she looked younger than the press photos suggested. Tired, too. Dark circles under her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that no amount of blazer tailoring could hide. Who are you? She asked. Caleb Hayes. I've been doing contract work for your company, vehicle maintenance and calibration. Her eyes narrowed. You're a mechanic. Yeah. And you think you can fix this? Caleb glanced past her at the X7. The hood was still open. Technicians still clustered around it like surgeons who'd lost the patient. I've seen this problem before, twice. On the prototypes. It's a calibration issue with the energy cell integration. Your team's been pushing the ignition sequence too fast, and it's destabilizing the whole system. Iris stared at him. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she turned to the head technician. Marcus, is that possible? Marcus, a tall guy with a beard and a Vanguard badge clipped to his belt, looked up, startled. I mean, it's a complex system. There could be a lot of factors. Is it possible? Marcus hesitated. Yeah, theoretically. Iris turned back to Caleb. Why didn't you mention this before? I did. I filed reports, never got a response. Her jaw tightened. She looked at Marcus, who suddenly found his tablet very interesting. Then she looked back at Caleb. If I let you try, and you make it worse, this company is finished. You understand that? I understand. And if you're wasting my time, I'll have security throw you out so fast your head will spin. Caleb nodded. Iris studied him for another beat, then stepped aside. You've got 5 minutes. The crowd was watching now, murmuring, curious. Caleb walked up to the X7, ignoring the stares, the cameras, the weight of a room full of people who'd already written him off. He leaned into the engine bay, scanning the layout. The energy cell was housed in a reinforced casing near the center, connected to the drive system by a series of high-voltage conduits. The integration module, a sleek black box about the size of a lunchbox, sat just above it, blinking red. Hand me a diagnostic tablet, Caleb said. Marcus hesitated, then passed one over. Caleb connected it to the module's access port and pulled up the calibration settings. There it was. Boot sequence set to 1.8 seconds. The system couldn't handle it. It needed at least 2.4 to stabilize. He adjusted the value, saved it, then checked the voltage regulators. One of them was slightly out of spec, probably from the repeated failed ignition attempts. He pulled a multi-tool from his pocket and made a quick adjustment. Try it now, he said. Iris hesitated, then slid into the driver's seat. She pressed the ignition button. The hum started, smooth, steady. The dashboard lit up, all green indicators. The engine didn't whine, didn't stutter. It just worked. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, a few people actually whistling. Iris sat frozen behind the wheel, staring at the dashboard like she couldn't believe it. Then she looked at Caleb through the windshield, and for the first time all night, she smiled. She climbed out of the car, and the applause grew louder. Cameras flashed. Journalists surged forward, but Iris held up a hand, silencing them. She walked over to Caleb, who was already stepping back, wiping grease off his hands with a rag someone had handed him. What's your name again? She asked. Caleb Hayes. Caleb Hayes, she repeated, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. This man just saved our launch, and he's not even on our engineering team. More applause. Caleb felt his face heat. This wasn't what he'd wanted. He just wanted his check. But Iris wasn't done. You said you filed reports about this issue? Yeah, months ago. She turned to Marcus. Why didn't I see them? Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. We were focused on the new design specs. Some of the contractor feedback got deprioritized. Deprioritized, Iris repeated, her voice flat. We thought, you thought wrong. She looked back at Caleb. How long have you been working for us? 2 months. Contract basis. And we haven't paid you yet, have we? Caleb shrugged. Accounting's been backed up. Iris's expression darkened. She pulled out her phone, typed something, then looked up. You'll have your payment by tomorrow morning, with a bonus. And I want to talk to you after this, privately. Caleb nodded, too tired to argue. Sure. He turned to leave, but Iris caught his arm. Wait, how did you know what to fix? I mean, really, you weren't guessing. No, Caleb said, I wasn't. So how? Caleb glanced at the X7, at the energy cell casing, the integration module, the conduits running through the engine bay like veins. He thought about the schematics he'd studied late at night after Maya went to bed, the designs he'd drafted and submitted when he was still working for a company that actually listened. Before the layoffs, before everything fell apart, I designed part of that system, he said quietly. 3 years ago, for a different company. We sold the patent to Vanguard. Or we were supposed to. I left before the deal closed. Iris's eyes widened. You designed? Just the integration module, the part that synchronizes the energy cell with the drive system. Your team modified it, made it flashier, faster boot time, better UI feedback. But they didn't account for the thermal load during ignition. It works great on paper. In practice, it fails. Iris stared at him. You're telling me we broke your design? Yeah. And you fixed it anyway. It was easier than watching it fail. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she laughed, short, sharp, almost disbelieving. You're not what I expected. Yeah, I get that a lot. Caleb walked back to the door where Maya was still curled up in the chair, Gerald clutched to her chest. He picked her up carefully and she mumbled something incoherent, her fever-warm forehead pressing against his neck. The security guard stepped aside without a word. As Caleb headed for the elevator, he glanced back at the ballroom one last time. Iris was standing by the X7, surrounded by investors and journalists, but she was looking at him, not at the car, not at the crowd, at him. He nodded once, then turned and left. The next morning, Caleb woke to an email notification. The payment had cleared, 3 times what he was owed, with a note, partial compensation for the oversight. Let's talk. 4. Maya was still asleep, her fever broken, Gerald tucked under her chin. Caleb sat at the kitchen table, staring at the email, then at the pile of bills beside his coffee mug. He thought about responding, about ignoring it, about what came next. But before he could decide, his phone rang. It was Iris, 2/2. You said, Đem sơ tử, nếu chưa đủ viết lại cho tôi đủ 6.500 đến 7.000 từ theo yêu cầu. Đem sơ tử, nếu chưa đủ viết lại cho tôi đủ 6.500 đến 7.000 từ theo yêu cầu, 15 giờ 48 phút. Claude responded, tôi đã đem và phàn 1, hiện tại chỉ có khoảng 3.100 từ. Chưa đủ yêu cầu 6.500 đến 7.000 từ. Tôi đã đem và phàn 1 hiện tại chỉ có khoảng 3.100 từ, chưa đủ yêu cầu 6.500 đến 7.000 từ. Tôi sẽ viết lại toàn bộ part 1 với đầy đủ số từ theo yêu cầu. The engine's last breath. The prototype Vanguard X7 sat gleaming under stadium lights, sleek as a predator, silent as a tomb. Investors shifted in their leather chairs. Iris Vaughn stood at the podium, microphone in hand, her confident smile starting to crack. She pressed the ignition button again. Nothing. Just a low, dying hum, like a patient flatlining in front of a room full of surgeons who'd already written the death certificate. Her company's future was bleeding out on polished concrete, and no one in the room knew how to stop it. Then a man in a wrinkled jacket slipped through the back door, a sleepy 6-year-old clutching his hand, and everything was about to change. If you want to see how one overlooked father turned a billion-dollar disaster into a second chance, stay with me until the end. And hey, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see just how far this story travels. I'm sick. Part 1. Caleb Hayes wasn't supposed to be there. He'd planned to swing by the Harrison Meridian Hotel's service entrance around 4, grab the envelope with his overdue payment from the loading dock supervisor, and be gone before anyone in a suit noticed. 2 months of contract work on a fleet of promotional vehicles, and the accounting department still hadn't cut the check. Typical. But his daughter's daycare had called at 3:30. Maya had a fever, nothing serious, just enough to send her home. So now he was an hour late, stuck in traffic on 405 with a groggy kid in the back seat asking why her forehead felt hot. It's your body fighting the bad guys, sweetheart, Caleb said, glancing at her in the rear view. She was 6, dark curls stuck to her temples, clutching the stuffed giraffe she'd named Gerald. Like superheroes. Do I get a cape? Maybe tomorrow. By the time he pulled into the underground garage, the loading dock was locked. A handwritten sign taped to the gate. Event in progress. Deliveries rescheduled. Caleb leaned his forehead against the steering wheel. Of course, the Vanguard Innovations product launch. He'd seen the banners going up all week while he'd been elbow-deep in engine grease, recalibrating ignition sequences on vehicles that would never make it past the press junket. Maya coughed softly. Daddy, I'm tired. I know, Bug. 5 minutes, I promise. He parked near a concrete pillar marked B7, the kind of spot where people left their cars and forgot about them for weeks. The engine ticked as it cooled. Maya's breathing had that wet, congested quality that meant she'd be up half the night. Caleb made a mental note to stop at the pharmacy on the way home, then remembered his bank account balance and revised the plan to checking the medicine cabinet first. He scooped her up, and she wrapped her arms around his neck without opening her eyes. 6 years old, and already she'd learned to sleep through anything. Car rides, grocery stores. That one time he'd had to bring her to a job site because the babysitter canceled. She was adaptable. He hated that she had to be. The lobby was chaos. Camera crews with shoulder-mounted rigs, tech journalists wearing lanyards and expressions of performative interest, security guards in black suits and earpieces forming a human wall between the elevator banks and a set of ornate double doors. Through the gap, Caleb caught glimpses of the main floor. A stage draped in midnight blue fabric, spotlights cutting through manufactured fog, a gleaming vehicle under a silk cover, and what looked like 200 people in blazers holding champagne flutes like they were at a wedding instead of a product demo. Sir, the event is invitation only, a guard said, stepping into Caleb's path. Young guy, early 20s, buzz cut, the kind of build that came from a gym membership and protein shakes, trying to look intimidating and almost pulling it off. I'm not here for the event, Caleb said. I need to speak to someone in finance. They owe me a paycheck. You'll have to come back tomorrow. I've been waiting 2 months. The guard's expression didn't change. Tomorrow. Caleb felt Maya's weight shift against his chest. She was half asleep already, her breath warm against his collarbone. He could push this. Demand to see a supervisor, make a scene. But what would that accomplish? The whole building was locked down for whatever spectacle Vanguard Innovations was putting on, and he was just a contractor, disposable, replaceable. The kind of worker who showed up in the budget as a line item, not a name. He turned to leave, already calculating how many meals he could stretch from the groceries in his fridge, when a voice crackled over the ballroom's speaker system. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're ready to begin. The murmur of conversation inside quieted. Caleb hesitated, one hand on Maya's back, the other gripping his key fob. He could see the stage now through the gap in the doors. The woman stepping up to the microphone was unmistakable. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled into a severe bun that probably required engineering-level precision, navy blazer that fit like it had been built around her frame, the kind of posture that said she'd taken public speaking courses and believed every word of them. Iris Vaughn. Caleb recognized her from the tech blogs his sister-in-law scrolled through during family dinners, reading headlines aloud like they were scripture. Self-made entrepreneur. Stanford dropout who'd turned a dorm room project into a publicly traded company. Youngest CEO in the autonomous vehicle sector. The media loved her because she gave good quotes and looked good giving them. Investors loved her because she made them richer. Employees probably had more complicated feelings, but they kept those off the record. We are about to witness history, Iris said, her voice smooth and practiced, the kind of tone that suggested she'd rehearsed this in front of a mirror until every inflection landed perfectly. The Vanguard X7 isn't just a car. It's the future of transportation. Zero emissions, fully autonomous. And thanks to a revolutionary new energy cell designed by our incredible team, it has a range of 800 miles on a single charge. No other vehicle on the market can match that. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Polite, measured, the kind of clapping people did when they were being recorded. Caleb shifted Maya to his other arm. He should leave. This wasn't his world. He fixed things. He got his hands dirty. He didn't stand in rooms full of people who measured success in stock prices and press coverage. But something about the setup nagged at him. He'd worked on Vanguard vehicles before, spent the last 2 months under the hoods of their prototype fleet, recalibrating systems that kept glitching out in ways the engineers couldn't explain. If this was the X7 and it was built on the same platform as those prototypes, then he already knew what problems it would have. He documented them, sent detailed reports to the project lead, never heard back. Let's see it in action, Iris said, her smile widening in a way that looked genuine until you noticed it didn't reach her eyes. A technician in a black polo shirt stepped forward and pulled the silk cover away with the kind of theatrical flourish that probably looked better in rehearsal. The crowd gasped on cue. The Vanguard X7 was stunning. All aggressive curves and carbon fiber, matte black paint that seemed to absorb light, chrome accents catching the spots like veins of mercury. LED strips traced the undercarriage in electric blue. It looked fast standing still. It looked expensive. It looked like the kind of machine that ended up in magazine spreads in billionaire garages. Iris walked around to the driver's side, her heels clicking against the stage floor in a rhythm that suggested confidence, control, inevitability. The door opened automatically as she approached, rising upward like a wing. She slid into the driver's seat with practiced ease, and the interior appeared on the massive screen behind her. Cream leather, touchscreen displays embedded in every surface, ambient lighting that shifted from blue to violet to green like a slow-motion lava lamp. "Now," Iris said, her voice amplified through the car's external speakers with perfect clarity. "Let's take her for a spin." She pressed the ignition button. Nothing happened. The crowd's murmur started as a ripple and built into a wave. Iris pressed the button again, harder this time, and Caleb saw her smile tighten at the edges. The dashboard flickered, displays coming online, then cutting out. A low hum started somewhere deep in the vehicle's core, rising in pitch, then dying with a sound like a sigh. Caleb felt his stomach drop. He knew that sound. "Technical difficulties," Iris said lightly, though her jaw had gone tight enough to crack teeth. "Bear with us for just a moment." A man in a Vanguard polo shirt jogged onto the stage, tablet clutched in both hands like a shield. He leaned into the car, tapped something on the center console, his fingers moving fast enough to blur. The hum started again, louder this time, climbing towards something that might have been an actual ignition sequence. Then it cut out with a sharp electronic whine that made half the audience wince. The crowd shifted. A few people pulled out their phones. Caleb saw a journalist in the front row typing furiously, her face lit by the glow of her screen. Another investor, older guy, gray suit, the kind of watch that cost more than Caleb's truck, leaned over to whisper something to his colleague. The colleague shook his head slowly. They both looked disgusted. Maya stirred against Caleb's chest. "Daddy, what's wrong with the car?" "I'm not sure, Bug." But he had a pretty good idea. He'd seen this exact failure twice before. Same symptoms, same progression. The energy cell integration module was misaligned, not physically, but in the calibration settings. The engineers kept overriding the boot sequence timing, chasing faster startup times to impress investors, not realizing they were destabilizing the entire ignition process. It was like trying to start a fire by throwing gasoline on it before the kindling was ready. Dramatic, attention-grabbing, doomed to fail. He'd flagged it in his reports, explained it in terms that didn't require an engineering degree to understand, sent follow-up emails. Nothing. The project lead had probably glanced at the subject line and deleted it. Contractors didn't design systems, they just maintained them. The technician stepped back from the car, shaking his head. Iris climbed out, her smile completely gone now, replaced by something that looked like fury wearing a professional mask. Two more technicians rushed onto the stage. They huddled around the open hood, speaking in urgent voices that didn't quite carry to the audience, but conveyed panic just fine. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, less polite. Caleb caught fragments of conversation floating past him. "Embarrassing. Typical startup arrogance. I told Martin this company was overvalued. Should have gone with the German manufacturer. This wasn't just a failed demo anymore. This was a public execution. Vanguard's stock price was probably in freefall already. Investors were mentally rewriting their portfolios. Journalists were composing headlines. And Iris Vaughn, the golden child of the tech world, was standing on stage watching her company's future collapse in real time. Caleb looked down at Maya. She was dozing again, her cheek pressed to his shoulder, Gerald the giraffe tucked under her arm. He should take her home, give her medicine, let her sleep in her own bed instead of a lobby chair. Forget about the check, forget about the car, forget about all of it. But his feet didn't move, because he knew what was wrong. He knew how to fix it, and some stupid, self-destructive part of him couldn't walk away from a problem he understood while everyone else flailed. "Daddy?" Maya's voice was muzzy with sleep. "Yeah, Bug? Can you fix it?" Caleb almost laughed. "It's not my job, but you know how." She wasn't wrong. She was 6 years old and running a fever, and she'd somehow cut through to the heart of it. He knew how. The question wasn't capability. It was whether he was willing to step into that room full of people who'd never looked at him twice and claim space he hadn't been given. Iris Vaughn was back at the microphone now. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was a tremor underneath it. We're experiencing a minor technical delay. Our engineering team is working to resolve it. In the meantime, please enjoy the refreshments, and we'll have everything running shortly. The crowd didn't move toward the refreshments. They wanted blood, or at least a spectacle worth the drive and the parking fee. Caleb saw the investor in the gray suit stand up, say something to his assistant, and head for the exit. Others followed, a slow hemorrhage that would turn into a flood if the car didn't start in the next few minutes. This wasn't just about Iris's ego or Vanguard's stock price. There were people working here. Engineers, technicians, administrative staff, people with families and mortgages, and kids who needed medicine when they got fevers. If the company tanked, they'd all be looking for work in a market that was already oversaturated with talent. Caleb glanced at the security guard, who was watching the stage with an expression somewhere between secondhand embarrassment and schadenfreude. Then he looked back at the X7, at Iris, who was now speaking quietly with the head technician, her hands gesturing sharply enough to suggest she was either problem-solving or assigning blame. At the investors already halfway to the doors, he thought about the invoice sitting in his truck's glove compartment. 2 months of work, nights spent away from Maya, hours under fluorescent lights in a garage that smelled like burnt rubber and disappointment. Then he thought about the X7 schematics, the ones he'd reviewed late at night after Maya went to bed. Not because he had to, but because he was meticulous and bored and good at what he did, even when nobody noticed. "Stay here for just a second, okay?" Caleb said, setting Maya down gently in one of the leather chairs near the entrance. She nodded without opening her eyes, Gerald clutched to her chest like a life preserver. Caleb walked toward the stage. The security guard stepped in front of him immediately. "Sir, you need to step back." "I can fix it," Caleb said. The guard blinked. "Excuse me?" "The car. I know what's wrong with it." "Sir, this is a private event. You need to leave the area." "Just let me talk to someone on the engineering team. I've worked on these vehicles. I know the platform." The guard's hand moved to the radio clipped to his belt. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave or I'll call for backup." "Wait!" The voice came from the stage, sharp, commanding. Every head in the vicinity turned. Iris Vaughn was looking directly at him now, one eyebrow raised in an expression that managed to convey both curiosity and skepticism. She stepped down from the platform, her heels clicking in a rapid staccato that suggested she was either annoyed or intrigued, possibly both. Up close, she looked different than the press photos. Younger in some ways, older in others, the kind of tired that came from carrying weight nobody else could see. "Who are you?" she asked. "Caleb Hayes. I've been doing contract work for your company the last 2 months. Vehicle maintenance and calibration on the prototype fleet." Her eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing. "You're a mechanic." "Yeah. And you think you can fix this?" It wasn't quite a question. Caleb glanced past her at the X7. The hood was still open. 3 technicians clustered around it like surgeons who'd lost the patient on the table and were trying to figure out which one of them would have to call the family. "I've seen this exact problem before. Twice. On the prototypes I was servicing. It's a calibration issue with the energy cell integration module. Your engineers keep pushing the ignition sequence timing too fast, and it's destabilizing the whole system." Iris stared at him for a long moment. Her expression gave away nothing, but he could see her mind working behind her eyes, weighing options, calculating risks. "Marcus," she called out, not looking away from Caleb. The head technician, tall guy with a dark beard and a Vanguard ID badge clipped to his belt, looked up from the engine bay. "Yeah? Is what he's describing possible?" Marcus hesitated, glancing between Iris and Caleb like he was trying to figure out if this was a trap. "I mean, the X7's a complex system. There could be multiple factors contributing to... Is it possible?" Iris's voice had gone flat, the kind of tone that didn't allow for hedging. "Yeah," Marcus admitted. "Theoretically, if the boot sequence timing is off, it could prevent ignition." Iris turned back to Caleb. "Why didn't you mention this before?" "I did. Filed detailed reports after each maintenance session. Sent them to your project lead. Never got a response." Her jaw tightened in a way that suggested someone was going to have a very uncomfortable conversation later. She looked at Marcus, who suddenly found his tablet extremely interesting, then back to Caleb. If I let you try this, and you make it worse, this company is finished. You understand that? I understand. And if you're wasting my time, I'll have security escort you out personally. Fair enough? Iris studied him for another beat. He could see her running calculations. The risk of letting an unknown contractor touch the vehicle that was supposed to save her company versus the certainty of failure if she didn't. You've got 5 minutes, she said finally. The murmur that went through the crowd was immediate. Caleb heard someone say, "Is she serious?" Another voice, "This is insane." A camera flashed. He ignored all of it and walked up to the X7, his focus narrowing to the problem in front of him. The engine bay was a work of art. Clean lines, efficient layout, everything labeled and color-coded for easy access. The energy cell sat in a reinforced casing near the center, sleek and compact, connected to the drive system by a web of high-voltage conduits that glowed faintly blue. The integration module was positioned just above it, a black box about the size of a lunchbox, status lights blinking red in a pattern that screamed distress. "Hand me a diagnostic tablet," Caleb said to Marcus. Marcus hesitated, clearly wrestling with the indignity of taking orders from a contractor, then passed one over. Caleb connected it to the module's access port and pulled up the calibration interface. The screen filled with data, voltage levels, temperature readings, boot sequence timing. There. Boot sequence set to 1.8 seconds. The system couldn't handle it. The energy cell needed time to stabilize, to synchronize with the drive system, to find its rhythm. Forcing it to ignite faster was like trying to sprint before you'd finished tying your shoes. He adjusted the value to 2.4 seconds and saved the change. Then he checked the voltage regulators. One of them was running slightly out of spec, probably from the repeated failed ignition attempts, the electrical equivalent of trying to start a flooded engine. He pulled a multi-tool from his jacket pocket and made a micro-adjustment to the calibration screw. "Try it now," he said, stepping back. Iris hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then slid into the driver's seat. The interior lights came on, bathing her in soft blue glow. She looked at Caleb through the windshield, her expression unreadable, then placed her hand on the ignition button. She pressed it. The hum started immediately, smooth, steady, building in pitch, but not wavering. The dashboard came alive, every indicator green, systems synchronizing in perfect sequence. The ambient lighting cycled through its program pattern. The touchscreens displayed their welcome animation. And underneath it all, Caleb could hear the energy cell's core spinning up, that distinctive high-frequency whine that meant power was flowing exactly where it needed to. The engine didn't stumble, didn't hesitate. It just worked. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, a few people actually whistling like they were at a concert instead of a product launch. Someone shouted, "Yes!" Cameras flashed in rapid succession. The journalists who'd been typing hit pieces 30 seconds ago were now capturing the resurrection. Iris sat frozen behind the wheel for a moment, staring at the dashboard like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Then she looked at Caleb through the windshield, and for the first time all night, she smiled. Really smiled. Not the practiced corporate expression, but something genuine that reached her eyes and made her look 10 years younger. She climbed out of the car, and the applause grew louder, feeding on itself. The investors who'd been halfway to the exit turned around. The journalists surged forward, but Iris held up one hand and the room quieted almost instantly. She walked over to Caleb, who was already stepping back, wiping engine grease off his hands with a shop rag someone had handed him. "What's your name again?" she asked, loud enough for every microphone in the room to pick up. "Caleb Hayes." "Caleb Hayes," she repeated, making sure it landed. "This man just saved our launch, and he doesn't even work on our engineering team." She paused, letting that sink in. "He's a contractor who filed reports about this exact issue months ago, reports that somehow never made it to my desk." The applause this time was more uncertain, people not quite sure if they were supposed to be celebrating or recognizing a corporate failure. Caleb felt his face heat. This wasn't what he'd wanted. He just wanted to fix the problem, get his check, go home to his daughter. But Iris wasn't done. "You said you filed reports?" she asked him directly. "Yeah, multiple. Detailed descriptions of the issue, recommended solutions, the works." She turned to Marcus. "Why didn't I see them?" Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. We were focused on the new design specifications. Some of the contractor feedback got deprioritized. Deprioritized. Iris repeated the word like she was tasting something rotten. You deprioritized reports from the person actually working on the vehicles in favor of what? Prettier UI animations? We thought the new boot sequence would improve the user experience. The user experience of a car that doesn't start is pretty terrible, Marcus. A few people in the crowd laughed nervously. Marcus went silent. Iris looked back at Caleb, her expression softening slightly. How long have you been working for us? 2 months? Contract basis. And we haven't paid you yet. It wasn't a question, but Caleb answered anyway. Accounting said there was a backlog. Her expression went from soft to granite. She pulled out her phone, typed something rapidly, then looked up. You'll have your payment by tomorrow morning. Full amount plus a 20% bonus for saving my company from catastrophic embarrassment. And I want to talk to you privately after this wraps up. Caleb nodded, too drained to argue. Sure. He started to turn away, but Iris caught his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Wait, I need to know something. How did you figure out what to fix? The other engineers have been working on this platform for months. You looked at it for 5 minutes. Caleb glanced at the X7, at the energy cell casing visible through the open hood, at the integration module with its status lights now glowing a peaceful green. He thought about the late nights 3 years ago when he'd been part of a team that actually listened to each other, that valued problem solving over politics. Before the acquisition, before the layoffs, before everything fell apart, I designed part of that system, he said quietly. 3 years ago, different company, we developed the integration module that synchronizes the energy cell with the drive system, sold the patent to Vanguard as part of a larger deal. I left before it closed. Iris's eyes went wide. You designed just the integration module, the core of it anyway. Your team modified it, made it better in some ways. The UI feedback is excellent. The boot animation is smooth, but they changed the timing parameters to make it faster, and they didn't account for the thermal dynamics during the ignition sequence. It works beautifully in simulation. In the real world, it fails every time. You're telling me we broke your design? You optimized it past the point of functionality, yeah, and you fixed it anyway. Caleb shrugged. Easier than watching it fail. Iris didn't say anything for a long moment. She just looked at him, really looked, like she was seeing him for the first time. Then she laughed, short, sharp, the kind of sound that came from genuine surprise. You're not what I expected. I get that a lot. No, I mean, she stopped, seemed to reconsider. Most people in your position would have walked away, let us fail, come back later and said, I told you so. I thought about it. But you didn't. I don't like watching things break when I know how to fix them. It's a character flaw. This time her laugh was longer, more genuine. I'm going to want to hear more about that design work, and about why you're working contract maintenance when you should be. She cut herself off, glanced at the crowd still watching them, and lowered her voice. We'll talk, soon. Caleb nodded and walked back toward the entrance, where Maya was still curled up in the chair, Gerald tucked under her chin. He scooped her up carefully, and she made a small sound of protest before settling back against his shoulder. The security guard who'd tried to kick him out earlier stepped aside without a word, his expression somewhere between respect and confusion. As Caleb headed for the elevator, he glanced back one more time. Iris was standing by the X7, surrounded by investors who were suddenly very interested in talking to her again. Journalists asking questions, technicians checking and rechecking systems that were now working perfectly. But she wasn't looking at any of them. She was looking at him. He nodded once. She nodded back. Then he turned and walked out into the parking garage, Maya warm and heavy in his arms, the sound of applause fading behind him. The elevator doors closed. His phone buzzed. An email notification. He shifted Maya to one arm and checked it. Subject: Payment processed. Vanguard Innovations. The amount was 3 times what he was owed. Below it, a note in the body of the email. Partial compensation for the oversight. Let's talk soon. We have a lot to discuss. 4. Caleb stared at the screen as the elevator descended. Maya stirred against his shoulder. Daddy, are we going home? Yeah, Bug, we're going home. Did you fix the car? I did. Are you a superhero now? Caleb smiled despite himself. No, sweetheart, just a mechanic. But as he walked out into the cool evening air, truck keys in hand, daughter asleep on his shoulder, bank account suddenly less terrifying, he had to admit that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. His phone rang before he reached the truck. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. Caleb Hayes? The voice was familiar. Iris. That's me. I know it's late and you have your daughter with you, but I need to ask you something before I lose my nerve. Okay. That integration module, the one you designed, do you still have the original schematics, the version before we modified it? Caleb thought about the external hard drive in his desk drawer at home, the one he'd kept meaning to throw away but never did. Yeah, I've got them. Can I see them? Tomorrow, if possible. I think my team's been chasing the wrong optimization targets, and I need to understand what we lost when we changed your design. Sure, I can send you the files. No. Her voice was firm. I want you to walk me through them, in person. I want to understand how you think about these systems. Caleb reached his truck and fumbled with the keys, trying not to wake Maya. You want me to consult? I want to offer you a job, a real one, not contract work, but I need to see those schematics first. Need to know if what I saw tonight was luck, or if you're actually as good as I think you are. It wasn't luck. Then prove it. Caleb got Maya settled in her car seat, Gerald tucked beside her. She didn't wake up. He climbed into the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel, at the dashboard lights, at his reflection in the rear-view mirror. He looked tired. He looked like a guy who'd been grinding for years with nothing to show for it, except bills and bruises and a 6-year-old who deserved better. Tomorrow afternoon work? He asked. I need to get her to the pediatrician in the morning. 3 o'clock, my office. I'll send you the address. I'll be there. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for tonight. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, he said. I did. He hung up and started the engine. It turned over on the first try, smooth and reliable, the way things were supposed to work when someone actually maintained them properly. As he pulled out of the garage and onto the street, headlights cutting through the darkness, he thought about tomorrow, about schematics and job offers and possibilities he'd stopped letting himself imagine, about what it might mean to be seen, really seen, instead of overlooked. Maya mumbled something in her sleep. Caleb reached back and adjusted Gerald, making sure the giraffe was secure. It's okay, Bug, he said softly. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, he actually believed it. The pediatrician's office smelled like antiseptic, and the artificial cherry scent they pumped through the ventilation system to make kids feel less anxious. It never worked. Maya sat on the examination table in her dinosaur t-shirt, swinging her legs and clutching Gerald while Dr. Patel checked her ears with the little light thing that always made her squirm. Just a mild ear infection, Dr. Patel said, stepping back. Nothing serious, amoxicillin twice a day for 10 days, and she'll be fine. Can I go to school tomorrow? Maya asked. Give it one more day at home. You'll be back to causing trouble by Friday. Maya grinned. Caleb took the prescription slip and tried not to think about the copay he'd just put on a credit card that was already limping toward its limit. Except now there was money coming, real money. Enough to cover this and the stack of other bills waiting on his kitchen counter. Thank you, he said to Dr. Patel. She's a tough kid. Takes after her dad, I'm guessing. Caleb managed a tired smile. Something like that. By the time they got home, filled the prescription, and got Maya settled on the couch with juice and cartoons, it was almost noon. Caleb made her grilled cheese for lunch, checked her temperature, going down, finally, and then stood in his bedroom staring at the closet like it held answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. What did you wear to meet with the CEO? He owned exactly 2 button-down shirts, both wrinkled. 1 pair of pants that wasn't jeans or cargo workwear. Shoes that weren't steel-toed boots. He settled on dark jeans that didn't have paint stains, the better of the 2 shirts, light blue, only 1 wrinkle he couldn't iron out, and the shoes he'd worn to his sister's wedding 3 years ago. He looked in the mirror and saw a guy trying too hard. He changed back into a clean black t-shirt and his regular jeans. Better to look like himself than a bad imitation of someone else. The external hard drive was exactly where he remembered it. buried under old tax returns in his desk drawer. He plugged it into his laptop and waited for it to spin up. The files were all there, organized by project and date, every schematic and calculation and revision note from his time at Meridian Systems. The integration module designs were in a folder labeled ECIS-Project, Energy Cell Integration System. He'd been so proud of this work. They all had been. A team of 6 engineers spending 18 months solving a problem everyone said was impossible. Then Meridian got acquired. The new parent company wanted to monetize the patents immediately, started selling them off to the highest bidders before the ink on the purchase agreement was dry. Half the team got laid off. The other half quit. Caleb had lasted 3 months before he realized staying meant watching everything they'd built get dismantled and sold for parts. He copied the files to a USB drive and checked the time. 1:30. Iris's office was downtown, a 40-minute drive if traffic cooperated. He went back to the living room where Maya was dozing against the armrest, Gerald tucked under her chin. "Hey, Bug, I need to go to a meeting for a couple hours. Mrs. Chen is coming over to stay with you, okay?" Maya opened one eye. "Is it about the car?" "Yeah, sort of." "Are you getting a new job?" "Maybe. I don't know yet." "Will it pay more than the old job?" Caleb crouched down beside the couch. 6 years old, and already she understood money in a way no kid should have to. "Probably, if it works out." "Then I hope it works out." "Me too, sweetheart." Mrs. Chen arrived 15 minutes later, retired schoolteacher from 2 doors down who babysat occasionally and never charged enough. Caleb gave her the medicine schedule, his cell number for the 3rd time even though she had it memorized, and strict instructions to call if anything changed. "She'll be fine," Mrs. Chen said, already settling into the recliner with her knitting. "You go do what you need to do." Caleb kissed Maya's forehead and headed out. Traffic on the 10 was stop and go, giving him too much time to think. About what he'd say. How he'd explain 3 years of career trajectory that looked like a controlled descent into irrelevance. About whether Iris Vaughn was serious about a job offer or just feeling generous after he'd saved her product launch. The Vanguard Innovations headquarters was a glass tower in the Arts District, the kind of building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought rectangles were too conventional. All angles and reflective surfaces, and a lobby that could double as a modern art installation. Caleb gave his name to the security desk, got a visitor badge that clipped to his shirt, and took the elevator to the 14th floor. Iris's assistant met him as the doors opened. Young guy, early 20s, wearing glasses and an expression of barely concealed stress. "Mr. Hayes? I'm Jordan. Miss Vaughn is finishing up a call, but she'll be ready in just a few minutes. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm good, thanks." Jordan led him to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Caleb sat in one of the chairs and tried not to feel out of place. The table alone probably cost more than his truck. Through the glass wall, he could see into Iris's office. She was pacing while she talked on the phone, gesturing with her free hand in sharp, precise movements. Even from here, he could tell the conversation wasn't going well. She hung up, said something to Jordan that made him wince, then walked into the conference room. "Caleb, thanks for coming." She looked different than she had last night, less polished somehow. Her hair was down, she'd traded the blazer for a gray sweater, and there were shadows under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept much. "How's your daughter?" "Ear infection, she'll be fine." "Good." Iris sat down across from him and folded her hands on the table. "I'm going to be direct because I don't have time to be anything else. Last night was both the best and worst thing that's happened to this company in 6 months. Best because the X7 works and investors saw it work. Worse because I found out this morning that my entire engineering team has been ignoring critical feedback from contractors for over a year. That's not just on them," Caleb said. "Your project lead should have been reviewing those reports." "My project lead is looking for a new job as of 9 this morning." Iris's expression didn't change. "Marcus is a brilliant engineer, but he's terrible at managing people and even worse at listening to anyone who doesn't have the right degree from the right school. I should have caught it sooner." "You can't read every report." "No, but I can build a culture where people feel like their input matters. Clearly, I failed at that." She leaned back in her chair. "Show me what you brought." Caleb pulled out the USB drive and slid it across the table. Iris plugged it into her laptop, and the files appeared on the screen mounted to the wall. She opened the first schematic, the original integration module design, clean and elegant, every component labeled and annotated. "Walk me through it," she said. Caleb stood and moved to the screen. The core challenge with energy cell integration is synchronization. You've got a power source that generates electricity in pulses, not a steady stream. The drive system needs steady current to function. The integration module acts as a buffer. It smooths out the pulses, stores excess energy, and releases it at a constant rate. Like a capacitor. Sort of, but more sophisticated. A capacitor just stores and releases. This actively manages the flow based on real-time demand from the drive system. It predicts what the vehicle needs and adjusts output before the system asks for it. Iris leaned forward, studying the schematic. "That's elegant. It works. Or it did, until your team started modifying it. Show me what they changed." Caleb pulled up one of the Vanguard schematics he'd seen in the X7's diagnostic system. The core architecture was the same, but someone had added layers of complexity, additional processing loops, faster response times, UI feedback integration. They wanted the car to feel more responsive, faster boot time, real-time status updates on every screen, ambient lighting that reacts to power flow. All good ideas in isolation. But every one of those features requires processing power and adds latency to the core synchronization loop. You're asking the module to do 15 things simultaneously when it was designed to do one thing perfectly. The result is a system that looks impressive in demos but fails under load. Iris was quiet for a moment, her eyes moving across the schematics. How much of this can be salvaged? Most of it. You don't need to start over. You just need to prioritize. Decide which features are essential and which ones are cosmetic. Strip out the cosmetic stuff, optimize what's left, and the system will work. How long would that take? For me, 2 weeks if I'm working alone, less if I have a team that listens. Iris looked at him. "I want to hire you, full-time, senior engineering position. You'd report directly to me until we replace Marcus, then to whoever takes his role. Starting salary is $140, benefits kick in after 90 days, and I'll throw in a signing bonus to cover the gap." Caleb felt like the floor had shifted. $140,000? Plus stock options. The company's not public yet, but when we go, you'll have equity. It was more money than he'd made in the best year of his career. It was stability. It was Maya's college fund. It was not having to check his bank balance before buying groceries. "There's a catch," Iris said. There's always a catch. I need you to fix the X7 platform completely, not just the integration module, the whole propulsion system. We've got 3 more prototypes in development and a production timeline that's already behind schedule. Investors are happy today, but they'll turn on us the second we miss a deadline. What's the timeline? 4 months to production ready, 6 if I can convince the board to push back the launch. Caleb did the math in his head. 4 months was aggressive, possible, but only if everything went right, which it never did. I'll need full access to the engineering team. No politics, no territory fights. If someone's not pulling their weight, I need authority to replace them. Done. And I need autonomy. I'm not going to spend 6 hours a day in meetings explaining my decisions to people who don't understand the systems. You'll have weekly check-ins with me. That's it. Everything else is on you. One more thing. Caleb hesitated. I've got a daughter, 6 years old. If she's sick, if her school calls, if there's an emergency, I need to be able to leave. No questions asked. Iris didn't hesitate. Family comes first. I mean that. My assistant has a daughter too. We make it work. Caleb looked at the schematic on the screen, at the years of work represented in those clean lines and careful calculations. He thought about Maya and Mrs. Chen and the pediatrician bills and the stack of past due notices. He thought about the last 3 years, grinding through contract work that paid barely enough to survive, watching his savings evaporate, wondering when things would finally break in a way he couldn't fix. "When do I start?" he asked. Iris smiled. "How about now? I want you to meet the engineering team, see what we're working with." She led him down a corridor to a large open workspace that looked like every tech company office he'd ever seen. Standing desks, monitors everywhere, a kitchen area with a fancy espresso machine, and a ping-pong table that probably never got used. About 20 people were scattered around the room, most of them staring at screens or huddled in small groups around whiteboards covered in equations. Iris clapped her hands twice. "Everyone, quick meeting, conference area." They gathered slowly, some curious, some annoyed at the interruption. Caleb recognized a few faces from last night, technicians who'd been on stage during the disaster. One of them, a woman in her 30s with short dark hair and a Vanguard hoodie, met his eyes and nodded slightly. "This is Caleb Hayes," Iris said once everyone was assembled. "Some of you saw him last night. He's the reason the X7 worked. As of today, he's joining our team as senior engineer. He'll be leading the propulsion system overhaul." The reaction was mixed. A few people looked relieved. Others looked skeptical. One guy in the back, late 20s, expensive sneakers, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, crossed his arms and said, "No offense, but isn't this the contractor who fixes our vehicles?" "Was," Caleb said. "Now I'm the guy who's going to make sure they don't break in the first place. We've got engineers for that. And yet here we are." The woman in the hoodie laughed, short and sharp. Expensive sneakers looked less amused. Iris stepped in smoothly. Caleb designed the integration module that powers our energy cell system, the original design that we've been modifying for the past year. He knows these systems better than anyone in this room, and he's going to help us get back on track. Questions? A hand went up. Younger guy, couldn't be more than 25, beard that looked like it required maintenance. "What's your approach going to be?" "Strip out everything that isn't essential," Caleb said. "Rebuild from a stable foundation. Test obsessively, no shortcuts." "That could take months. It'll take longer if we keep doing what we've been doing." Another hand, the woman in the hoodie. "Are you planning to replace people?" "Only if they can't work as a team. I don't care about degrees or where you went to school. I care if you can solve problems and communicate honestly when something's not working." She nodded, apparently satisfied. Expensive sneakers wasn't done. "What makes you think you can do this better than the team that's been working on it for a year?" Caleb met his eyes. "Because I've already done it once. You're working with a modified version of something I built from scratch. I know every failure point, every compromise, every decision that went into the original design. You've been trying to improve something you don't fully understand. That ends now." Iris let the silence sit for a moment, then said, "Caleb starts tomorrow. Be ready to walk him through your current work. That's all." The group dispersed. Most people went back to their desks. A few lingered, shooting curious glances at Caleb. The woman in the hoodie walked over and stuck out her hand. "Rachel Kim, Propulsion Systems. I'm glad you're here. We've been hitting the same problems for months, and nobody wants to admit we're stuck." Caleb shook her hand. "What's the biggest issue right now?" "Energy efficiency. We're getting the range we need in controlled tests, but real-world conditions cut it by almost 30%. We can't figure out why." "Thermal management," Caleb said immediately. "The integration module isn't accounting for ambient temperature variation. It's calibrated for ideal conditions." Rachel blinked. "How do you—" "Because I made the same mistake in the first prototype. Took me 3 weeks to figure it out." He pulled out his phone and sent her a file from the USB drive. "Try this calibration table. It's temperature adjusted. Should get you closer." She looked at her phone, then back at him, something like respect forming in her expression. "I'll test it today." Expensive sneakers walked past without making eye contact. Rachel watched him go and lowered her voice. "That's Derek Chen, lead systems architect. He's not going to make this easy for you." I gathered. "He's brilliant, but he doesn't handle criticism well. And he definitely doesn't like the idea of reporting to someone who didn't go to MIT. Where'd he go?" "Stanford, same as Iris. They were in the same program, actually. She brought him on when she started the company." Caleb filed that information away. Office politics. He'd hoped to avoid it, but apparently that was wishful thinking. "Thanks for the heads up." "No problem. And seriously, thank you for last night. We were about 10 minutes away from a company-wide disaster." After Rachel left, Iris walked Caleb back to her office. Jordan was waiting with a stack of papers. Employment forms, tax documents, direct deposit authorization. "HR will walk you through all of this," Iris said. "Take the paperwork home, bring it back tomorrow. I've also got a laptop and access credentials being set up. You'll have everything you need by morning." "Sounds good." She hesitated, then said, "Derek's going to be a problem." "I noticed. He's protective of his work, and he's used to being the smartest person in the room. Having someone come in and tell him he's been doing things wrong for a year isn't going to sit well. Should I be worried about him sabotaging things?" "No, he's not petty like that. But he will argue with you, push back on everything, make you prove every decision. I can handle that. I believe you. Just be patient with him. He's good at what he does. We need him. Caleb thought about the modifications to his integration module, the layers of unnecessary complexity, the features that prioritized flash over function. Does he know the system failed because of his changes? I told him this morning. He didn't take it well. I bet. Iris looked tired suddenly. She sat on the edge of her desk and rubbed her eyes. I built this company from nothing. Maxed out credit cards, lived in a studio apartment with 2 roommates, ate ramen for a year straight. I hired people I thought were brilliant, gave them freedom to innovate. And somehow we ended up with a vehicle that doesn't work and a team that doesn't communicate. I'm trying to figure out where I went wrong. You didn't hire a systems check, Caleb said. You hired innovators, creative thinkers, people who wanted to push boundaries. That's great for development, but at some point you need someone who can say no, who can look at a brilliant idea and kill it because it doesn't serve the core function. Is that what you're going to be, the person who says no? When I need to be, yeah. She smiled faintly. I have a feeling Derek's going to hate you by the end of the week. Probably. Caleb left the building with a folder full of employment forms and a head full of possibilities. The drive home felt different somehow, lighter, like he'd been carrying weight he hadn't realized was there, and someone had finally helped him set it down. Maya was awake when he got home, her fever completely gone, sitting on the couch with Mrs. Chen, watching some animated movie about talking animals. She looked up when he walked in. How was the meeting? Good. Really good, actually. Did you get the job? I did. Maya grinned, huge and genuine, the kind of smile that made every difficult decision feel worth it. Are we rich now? Caleb laughed. Not rich, but we're going to be okay. Mrs. Chen gathered her knitting and stood. I'm glad to hear it. You deserve some good news. After she left, Caleb made dinner, spaghetti with actual meat sauce instead of just tomatoes from a can, and sat with Maya while she ate and told him about the movie she'd watched, and whether Gerald the giraffe would like spaghetti if giraffes could eat people food. Probably not, Caleb said. They eat leaves. That sounds boring. Yeah, probably. He got her ready for bed, read her 2 chapters from the book they'd been working through, and tucked Gerald in beside her. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? Is the new job going to be hard? Probably, but I think I can do it. You can do anything. Caleb kissed her forehead. Get some sleep, okay? Okay. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. He went back to the kitchen and spread the employment forms across the table. Direct deposit information, emergency contacts, beneficiary designation. He filled them out slowly, carefully, making sure every blank was complete. When he got to the section about start date, he wrote tomorrow's date and felt something shift in his chest. This was real. This was happening. His phone buzzed. A text from Iris. Forgot to mention, there's a team dinner Friday night, casual. Bring Maya if you need to. We've got a couple other parents on staff. Kids are welcome. Caleb stared at the message for a long moment. A job that paid enough to breathe. A boss who understood that family came first. A team that needed fixing but was worth fixing. He typed back, "We'll be there." Then he set the phone down, looked at the forms one more time, and allowed himself to believe that maybe, finally, things were turning around. Outside, the city hummed with its usual noise. Inside, for the first time in years, the apartment felt quiet, in a way that wasn't heavy. Maya was asleep. The bills were still on the counter, but they didn't feel quite as threatening anymore. And tomorrow, he'd walk into Vanguard Innovations not as a contractor who got ignored, but as someone who belonged there. He thought about Derek Chen and the inevitable conflicts ahead, about Rachel Kim and the problems she'd been wrestling with for months, about the X7 prototypes waiting in the garage, complex and broken and fixable if someone just took the time to understand them properly. Caleb had always been good at fixing things. Now he'd get to prove it mattered. He finished the paperwork, double-checked everything, and put it in his bag for tomorrow. Then he turned off the lights and went to bed, where sleep came easier than it had in months. Caleb's first official day started with Derek Chen standing in front of his desk before he'd even finished logging into his new laptop. "We need to talk," Derek said. No greeting, no welcome to the team, just straight into it. Caleb set down his coffee. "Good morning to you too." The calibration table you sent Rachel yesterday. Where did it come from? My original design files. Why? Derek pulled out his tablet and turned it toward Caleb. A spreadsheet filled the screen, rows of data highlighted in yellow. Because she tested it last night and our efficiency numbers jumped 11%. 11. We've been chasing a 3% improvement for 4 months. That's good news, right? It's embarrassing news. It means we've been spinning our wheels on a problem you solved 3 years ago. Derek's jaw was tight. It also means your original design was better than what we built. Caleb leaned back in his chair. Not better, different. You were optimizing for user experience. I was optimizing for function. Both matter. You just prioritized the wrong one first. Easy to say now. It was easy to say in the reports I filed 2 months ago. Nobody read them. Derek's expression flickered, something between anger and embarrassment. He set the tablet down on Caleb's desk. Iris wants you to audit the entire propulsion system. Every component, every modification we've made in the past year. She wants a full report by Monday. Today's Wednesday. I'm aware. That's not enough time to do it properly. Then I guess you'll be working late. Derek turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I don't think you're wrong about the integration module. I think I pushed too hard on the feature set. But that doesn't mean I'm going to roll over and let you tear apart everything we've built without pushing back. I wouldn't expect you to. Derek studied him for a moment, then nodded once and walked away. Caleb watched him go and took a long drink of coffee. This was going to be a fun week. Rachel appeared in his peripheral vision, leaning against the partition that separated his workspace from the rest of the floor. That looked tense. He's not thrilled with me. He's not thrilled with anyone right now. Iris reamed him out yesterday after you left, told him his ego was costing the company millions. Rachel sat on the edge of Caleb's desk. Between you and me, he needed to hear it, but it didn't make him like you anymore. I'm not here to be liked. Good, because Derek has a lot of friends on this team, people who've been working with him since the beginning. They're loyal. Are you one of them? Rachel smiled. I'm loyal to getting things right. If that means following Derek, great. If it means following you, also great. I just want to build something that actually works. Then we'll get along fine. She pushed off the desk. I'm running thermal stress tests this afternoon on the updated calibration. Want to observe? Yeah, absolutely. The morning passed in a blur of system documentation and code reviews. Caleb pulled up every modification the team had made to his original integration module design, tracing the changes backward through version history, trying to understand not just what they'd changed, but why. Some of it made sense. Improvements to error handling, better diagnostic feedback, smarter power distribution during peak load, but a lot of it was cosmetic. Features that looked impressive in demos but added processing overhead without meaningful benefit. He started building a spreadsheet. Component, modification, rationale, performance impact. By lunch, he had 47 entries, and he was only halfway through the propulsion system. You actually going to eat or just stare at that screen all day? Caleb looked up. Rachel was standing there with her jacket on, car keys in hand. Where are we going? Taco truck 2 blocks away. Best al pastor in the city. Come on. The truck was parked in a lot between 2 warehouses, the kind of place you'd never find unless someone showed you. They ordered and sat on a concrete barrier, eating while trucks rumbled past on the street behind them. So what's your story? Rachel asked. Iris said you used to work at Meridian Systems. 4 years? Left right before they got acquired. Smart move. I heard that acquisition was brutal. It was. Half the engineering team got laid off in the first month. The other half quit within 6 months. The company that bought them just wanted the patents. That's where Vanguard got your integration module design. Caleb nodded. We sold off everything that wasn't nailed down. I left before I had to watch them dismantle the rest. And you've been doing contract work since then? Yeah, maintenance, mostly. Kept me busy, but it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. Rachel took a bite of her taco. What did you want to be doing? This. Building things. Solving actual problems instead of just patching other people's mistakes. Well, you're going to get plenty of that here. We've got 3 prototypes in various stages of broken, a production timeline that makes no sense, and a team that can't agree on what color the sky is. It's chaos. Sounds perfect, she laughed. You're either very confident or very stupid. Little bit of both, probably. They finished eating and walked back to the office. The thermal stress tests were set up in the garage level beneath the building, a massive space filled with prototype vehicles in various states of assembly. The X7 from the launch event sat in the center bay, connected to a diagnostic rig that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Rachel pulled up the test interface on a nearby monitor. We're going to simulate a full day of driving under extreme conditions: desert heat, mountain cold, stop-and-go traffic, highway cruising. The system needs to maintain consistent performance across all of it. What have the results been so far? Inconsistent? We get good performance in moderate temperatures, but efficiency drops off a cliff once we hit extremes, either too hot or too cold. Caleb pulled up the calibration settings on another monitor. Your thermal compensation algorithm is reacting instead of anticipating. It waits for the temperature to change, then adjusts. By the time it compensates, the system's already operating outside optimal parameters. So how do we fix it? Predictive modeling. The system needs to monitor ambient temperature trends and adjust before the temperature actually changes. If it sees the temperature rising steadily, it starts compensating early. Rachel frowned at the code. That's going to require rewriting the entire thermal management subroutine. Yeah. Derek's not going to like that. Derek doesn't have to like it. He just has to accept that it's necessary. They ran the first test with the updated calibration table. The X7's systems hummed to life. Dashboard displays showing simulated driving conditions. Temperature started moderate, then climbed steadily into triple digits. Caleb watched the efficiency numbers on the monitor. They stayed stable, small fluctuations, but nothing dramatic. It's holding, Rachel said, leaning closer to the screen. The simulation shifted to cold conditions. Temperature dropped to 15 degrees. Efficiency dipped slightly, then stabilized, still within acceptable parameters. How is it doing that? Rachel asked. The calibration table accounts for thermal inertia. The system doesn't just react to current temperature. It factors in how quickly the temperature is changing and adjusts power distribution accordingly. The test ran for 2 hours. By the end, efficiency had stayed within 8% of baseline across all conditions. Rachel stared at the results like she didn't quite believe them. This is better than anything we've gotten in 6 months of testing. Because the original design was built for this. Your team added features on top of a stable foundation. The foundation was fine. The features needed work. Rachel saved the test data and turned to face him. Derek's going to say you got lucky. That this was a controlled test and real-world conditions will be different. Then we'll test it in real-world conditions. When? Tomorrow. I'll drive one of the prototypes, full day, city streets, highway, whatever. We'll log everything and see how it performs. Rachel smiled. I like the way you think. Back upstairs, Caleb spent the rest of the afternoon finishing his audit. By the time people started leaving for the day, he had a 72-page document outlining every modification, every performance issue, and every recommended fix. He sent it to Iris with a note. This is what we're working with. Let me know when you want to discuss. Her response came back in under 5 minutes. My office now. Iris was standing by her window when he walked in, looking out over the city. She didn't turn around immediately. I've been reading your report. Well, skimming it. I'll read the whole thing tonight. It's not pretty. No, it's not. She turned to face him. You're basically saying we need to rebuild half the propulsion system from scratch. Not from scratch, but we need to strip out the unnecessary modifications and rebuild from a stable baseline. Yes. How long? If I have full authority and people actually listen to me? 6 weeks for the first prototype, another 4 to replicate across the other vehicles. Iris walked to her desk and sat down heavily. We don't have 10 weeks. The board wants production-ready vehicles in 3 months. If we miss that deadline, we lose our primary investor. Then we're going to miss the deadline because I can't deliver a functional vehicle in 3 months if I'm building on a broken foundation. That's not an option. It's the only option. You can either have a vehicle that works in 10 weeks or a vehicle that fails spectacularly in 3 months. Your choice. Iris stared at him. You don't pull punches, do you? You hired me to fix things. That means being honest about how broken they are. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the desk. If I go to the board and ask for more time, they're going to ask why. And if I tell them it's because our engineering team spent a year building on top of flawed modifications, they're going to lose confidence in the entire company. So don't tell them that. Tell them we're implementing critical performance improvements that will increase efficiency by 15% and extend range by 100 miles. Which is true, is it? Based on the thermal tests Rachel and I ran today, yeah, it is. Iris leaned back in her chair, eyes closed. You've been here one day, and you're already making my life more complicated. Sorry. Don't be. Complicated means we're actually solving problems instead of pretending they don't exist. She opened her eyes. Do what you need to do. I'll handle the board. But Caleb, if this doesn't work, we're both out of a job. Understood. He left her office and found Derek waiting by the elevators, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I saw your report, Derek said. That was fast. Iris sent it to the entire engineering team. She wants everyone on the same page. And? And you're not wrong about any of it. Derek looked like the admission cost him something. I pushed too hard on features, got attached to the idea of building something revolutionary instead of something functional. That's on me. Caleb hit the elevator button. We can fix it. Can we? You're talking about undoing a year of work. I'm talking about salvaging a year of work. The foundation is solid. We just need to rebuild smarter. The elevator arrived. Derek stepped in with him, and they rode down in silence for a few floors. Then Derek said, I don't like you. I gathered. But I respect what you're trying to do, and I'm not going to sabotage it. If you need something from me, ask. I'll deliver. Fair enough. Just don't expect me to be happy about it. Wouldn't dream of it. Derek got off on the garage level. Caleb rode down to the lobby and walked out into the evening air. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister. Heard you got a real job. About time. Dinner this weekend? He typed back, can't. Work thing Friday. Maybe next week. The drive home was slow, traffic thick with people leaving downtown. Caleb's mind kept circling back to the report, to the timeline, to the impossible math of delivering something functional in a time frame that didn't allow for mistakes. He'd done it before, at Meridian, working 100-hour weeks with a team that trusted each other completely. But that was before the acquisition, before Maya. Before he learned that burning yourself out for a company that didn't care about you was a fast track to nowhere. This felt different, though. Iris cared. Rachel cared. Even Derek, for all his prickly pride, cared about building something real. Maybe that was enough. Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework when he got home, Mrs. Chen supervising from the living room. He paid her, thanked her for staying late, and waited until she left before sitting down across from his daughter. How was school? Good. We learned about fractions. Fun. Not really. She looked up from her worksheet. Are you going to be working late a lot now? Probably. For a little while. How late? I don't know yet, Bug. But I promise I'll always be here for breakfast and bedtime, okay? Maya considered this, then nodded. Okay. But you have to read 2 chapters at bedtime, not 1. Deal. She went back to her homework. Caleb made dinner, stir-fry with actual vegetables this time, not just rice and frozen peas. They ate together, and Maya told him about her friend Emma, who'd brought a lizard to school for show and tell, and how the lizard had escaped and they'd spent 20 minutes trying to catch it. Did you catch it? Yeah, it was hiding in Mrs. Patterson's desk drawer. She screamed. Caleb laughed despite his exhaustion. I bet she did. After dinner, he helped Maya finish her homework, then let her watch 30 minutes of cartoons while he cleaned up the kitchen. His laptop sat on the counter, closed, but somehow still demanding attention. He wanted to open it, keep working, dive deeper into the propulsion system architecture. But Maya's voice from the living room, laughing at something on the TV, pulled him back. Tomorrow. He'd work on it tomorrow. He got Maya ready for bed, read her 3 chapters instead of 2 because he felt guilty about the late nights ahead, and kissed her forehead. Daddy? Yeah? Are you happy? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? You smile more now, since you got the new job. Caleb thought about it. About the stress and the impossible timeline, and Derek's barely contained hostility. About the way it felt to solve problems that mattered, to be part of something that could actually go somewhere. Yeah, Bug. I think I am. Good. You should smile more. I'll work on it. After she fell asleep, Caleb went back to the kitchen and opened his laptop. The propulsion system schematics stared back at him, complex and broken, and waiting. He pulled up a blank document and started drafting a work plan. Phase 1, thermal management overhaul. Phase 2, power distribution optimization. Phase 3, integration testing. 6 weeks if everything went perfectly, which it wouldn't. 8 weeks realistically. 10 if they hit major problems. He was still working at midnight when his phone buzzed. A text from Iris. Just finished your report. You're right about everything. This is going to be hard. Caleb typed back, yeah, but we can do it. Her response came a minute later. I'm glad you're here. He stared at the message for a moment, then set the phone down and went back to work. Outside, the city was quiet, except for the occasional car passing by. Inside, the apartment was still except for the soft hum of his laptop and the sound of Maya breathing in the next room. Caleb worked until 2 in the morning, building out the work plan in detail, assigning tasks, identifying dependencies, and potential bottlenecks. When he finally closed the laptop, his eyes were burning and his back ached from hunching over the table. But the plan was solid, aggressive, but achievable if the team committed. He set an alarm for 6, giving himself 4 hours of sleep, and collapsed into bed still wearing his jeans. The next morning came too fast. He got Maya ready for school, made breakfast that neither of them had time to finish, and dropped her off at the front entrance with a promise to pick her up on time for once. Then he drove to Vanguard, parked in the garage, and took the elevator up to find Rachel already at his desk. Morning, she said, holding out a cup of coffee. You look terrible. Thanks. You're a real confidence booster. I mean it. When did you sleep? Long enough. He took the coffee gratefully. Are we still testing the prototype today? If you're up for it. I've got the vehicle prepped and a full diagnostic suite ready to log data. Let's do it. They spent the morning running pre-checks, making sure every sensor was calibrated and every data stream was recording properly. By noon, they were ready. Caleb climbed into the prototype, a sleek silver vehicle that looked similar to the X7 but had a rougher, unfinished quality. The interior smelled like new electronics and industrial adhesive. Rachel handed him a tablet mounted to the dashboard. This will show real-time performance metrics. I'll be monitoring remotely, but if you see anything weird, pull over and call me. Got it. And Caleb, don't wreck our prototype. Iris will kill both of us. No promises. He pulled out of the garage and onto the street, feeling the vehicle respond smoothly to his inputs. The steering was tight, the acceleration immediate but controlled. He headed for the highway, merging into traffic and pushing the speed up to 70. The data on the tablet showed efficiency holding steady at 93%. He drove for 3 hours, varying conditions as much as possible. City streets with constant stops and starts. Highway cruising at sustained speed. Steep hills that put load on the drive system. By the time he pulled back into the garage, he had enough data to build a comprehensive performance profile. Rachel was waiting, laptop open, already analyzing the data stream. How did it feel? Good, better than I expected. Look at this. She turned the laptop toward him. A graph showed efficiency over time, with colored bands indicating different driving conditions. The line stayed consistently high, never dropping below 87% even under heavy load. This is the best performance we've ever recorded. Because we're working with a stable baseline now. No conflicting systems trying to optimize against each other. Rachel saved the data and closed her laptop. Derek saw the preliminary numbers. He wants to meet tomorrow morning, full team. I think he's ready to commit to your approach. Or he's ready to pick it apart in front of everyone. Could be both. Caleb checked the time. 3:30. He was supposed to pick up Maya at 4. I need to go. Can you send me tonight's data summary? Already done. It's in your inbox. He made it to Maya's school with 5 minutes to spare. She came running out with her backpack bouncing, climbed into the truck, and immediately started talking about the field trip next week to the Science Museum. Caleb listened, offered appropriate responses, and tried not to think about the team meeting tomorrow or the 10-week timeline or Derek's inevitable pushback. When they got home, Maya went straight to her room to play while Caleb started dinner. His phone buzzed with messages. Rachel sending additional data, Iris asking for a status update, Derek requesting he review a technical document before tomorrow's meeting. He answered them all while boiling pasta, His attention split between the phone screen and the pot, threatening to boil over. "Daddy, you're burning something." Caleb looked up. The sauce was smoking at the edges. He yanked it off the burner and stirred frantically. "It's fine, just a little crispy." Maya peered over the counter. "It's burned. It's caramelized." "That's not what caramelized means." "Since when did you become a food critic?" She grinned. "Since you started burning dinner." They ate the slightly burned pasta, and Maya didn't complain once. After dinner, homework, and the nightly battle over how many more minutes of TV she could watch, Caleb finally got her into bed. He read one chapter, promised to read more tomorrow, and turned off the light. Back in the kitchen, he opened his laptop and pulled up Derek's technical document. It was a counterproposal to Caleb's work plan, a faster timeline with fewer modifications, banking on targeted fixes instead of comprehensive overhaul. It was well-reasoned, professionally written, and completely wrong. The approach might save time in the short term, but it would leave underlying problems unaddressed, creating bigger failures down the road. Caleb drafted a response, deleted it, drafted another version, deleted that too. Finally, he just wrote, "We need to talk about this tomorrow. In person." Derek's response came back immediately. "Agreed. See you at 9. Caleb closed the laptop and sat in the quiet kitchen, feeling the weight of everything ahead. The meeting tomorrow would be a turning point. Either the team would commit to doing this right, or they'd fracture into competing approaches and waste weeks arguing while the deadline got closer. He thought about Iris trusting him with this, about Rachel already implementing his fixes, about Derek grudgingly admitting he'd been wrong but still fighting to maintain control, about Maya sleeping in the next room, counting on him to build something stable enough to last. Outside, the night pressed against the windows. Inside, Caleb sat alone with his thoughts, and the constant hum of uncertainty that came with trying to fix something that had been broken for longer than anyone wanted to admit. But he'd fixed things before. This was just bigger. He could do this. He had to. The conference room was already full when Caleb walked in at 8:55. The entire engineering team, 23 people according to the roster he'd memorized, sat around the table or stood along the walls. Derek was at the head, laptop open, looking like he'd been there for an hour already preparing. Rachel caught Caleb's eye from across the room and gave him a small nod that might have been encouragement or warning. Iris slipped in right behind him and closed the door. "Morning, everyone. Let's get started." Derek stood. "Thanks for coming. We're here to discuss the two competing proposals for the propulsion system overhaul, mine and Caleb's." He pulled up a slide comparing timelines side by side. Caleb's approach is comprehensive but takes 10 weeks minimum. Mine is targeted and gets us to production ready in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Band-Aids, Caleb said quietly. Derek's jaw tightened. "Excuse me? Your proposal fixes surface problems without addressing root causes. We'll hit production on time and start seeing failures 3 months later." "That's speculation. It's pattern recognition. I've seen this exact approach fail before. Fast fixes that create slow disasters." Iris leaned forward. "Caleb, walk us through your concerns." Caleb stood and moved to the screen. Derek's plan focuses on the 3 biggest efficiency drains: thermal management, power distribution lag, and regenerative braking inconsistency. All valid targets. But they're symptoms, not causes. He pulled up his own schematic. The real problem is architectural. The system was designed to operate as an integrated whole. When you modify one component without adjusting the others, you create cascade failures. "We've been running modified systems for months," Derek countered. "The vehicles work. They work until they don't. You saw what happened at the launch event. That wasn't a random failure. It was inevitable, given the modifications." A voice from the back, one of the junior engineers, a guy named Tim. "So what's the alternative? Start from scratch?" "No. We keep the foundation. Strip out the modifications that conflict with core functionality. Rebuild the ones that actually improve performance. It's surgical, not scorched earth." Derek crossed his arms. "And you're certain this works?" "I'm certain the alternative doesn't. Rachel's test data proves the baseline design is sound. Everything beyond that needs justification." Rachel cleared her throat. "I've been running the numbers. Caleb's calibration improvements alone give us 12% better efficiency across temperature ranges. That's not incremental, that's fundamental. Because we're working with the original design parameters," Caleb added. "The ones that were tested and proven before your team started adding features. Derek looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the angle. Instead, he turned to Iris. It's your call. Iris was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming on the table. Everyone watched her, waiting. Finally, she said, We go with Caleb's approach. Full overhaul, 10-week timeline. The board's not going to accept that, Derek said. Then I'll convince them. Or I won't, and we'll deal with the consequences. But I'm not shipping vehicles I know will fail just to hit an arbitrary deadline. She looked around the room. This is going to be hard. Long hours, weekend work. Some of you aren't going to like the decisions we make. But if we do this right, we build something that actually lasts. The room was silent. Then Rachel said, I'm in. Others echoed her. Not everyone. Caleb counted at least 5 people who looked skeptical or outright hostile. But enough. A majority. Derek stood there for a moment, visibly wrestling with something, then nodded once. Fine, but I want weekly reviews, full transparency on progress and problems. Done, Caleb said. Iris stood. Caleb, Derek, Rachel, stay. Everyone else, get to work. The room cleared quickly. Once it was just the 4 of them, Iris closed the door and leaned against it. Okay, real talk. Can you 2 actually work together, or am I going to spend the next 10 weeks refereeing? Derek looked at Caleb. Caleb looked back. Neither spoke immediately. We'll manage, Derek said finally. That's not an answer. It's the best answer you're getting right now, Caleb said. We disagree on approach. That's not going to change overnight, but we both want the same outcome. Which is a vehicle that works and a company that survives. Derek's expression softened slightly. Yeah, that. Iris nodded. Then figure out how to disagree without destroying each other. Rachel, you're the buffer. If they start getting territorial, shut it down. Great, I always wanted to be a referee, Rachel muttered. They spent the next 2 hours breaking down the work plan into specific tasks and assignments. Derek would handle power distribution optimization. It was his area of expertise, and despite their differences, Caleb trusted his technical ability. Rachel took thermal management. Caleb kept integration and system architecture. They divided the rest of the team based on skill sets and availability, trying to balance workload without overwhelming anyone. By noon, they had a functioning plan. Aggressive, but achievable if people committed. Caleb sent the assignments to the full team and got back a mix of confirmations and complaints. One engineer, a woman named Sarah, who'd been with Vanguard since the beginning, replied with a terse message. This timeline is unrealistic. Someone's going to burn out. She wasn't wrong. But what was the alternative? Caleb grabbed lunch at his desk, barely tasting the sandwich while reviewing Derek's technical specs for the power distribution redesign. The approach was sound, more conservative than what they'd been running, but that was the point. Conservative meant reliable. Flashy could wait until after they had something functional. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya's school. Maya's teacher would like to schedule a parent conference. Please call to arrange a time. Caleb stared at the message. Parent conferences usually meant problems. Maya was a good kid, bright and well-behaved, but she'd been through a lot the past few years. Divorce, financial stress, a father who worked too much and worried too much, and sometimes forgot to pack her the lunch she actually wanted. He called the school during his break. The secretary connected him to Mrs. Patterson, Maya's teacher. Mr. Hayes, thank you for calling back so quickly. Is everything okay? Maya's not in trouble, is she? No, nothing like that. I just wanted to touch base about some things I've noticed. Maya's a wonderful student, but she's been quieter lately, less engaged during group activities. I wanted to make sure everything's all right at home. Caleb's chest tightened. We've had some changes recently. I started a new job. Different hours, more demanding. Maybe that's affecting her. That could be part of it. She also mentioned her mother hasn't called in a few weeks. The tightness became a knot. Maya's mother, his ex-wife, Claire, had moved to Portland 2 years ago for a job opportunity and new boyfriend. She was supposed to call every Sunday, supposed to visit once a month. The calls had become sporadic, the visits even more so. Maya never complained, but Caleb saw the way she checked her phone on Sunday evenings, waiting for a call that increasingly didn't come. I'll talk to her, Caleb said. Make sure she knows she can tell me if something's bothering her. I think that would help. And Mr. Hayes, for what it's worth, you're doing a great job. Single parenting is hard. Maya's lucky to have you. The words should have felt good. Instead, they just made him tired. Thanks. I appreciate you letting me know. He hung up and sat there for a moment, staring at his desk. The work plan, the timelines, the schematics. All of it felt distant suddenly, less important than a 6-year-old who was withdrawing because her father was too busy fixing cars and her mother was too busy with a new life. Rachel appeared in his peripheral vision. You okay? Yeah, just family stuff. Want to talk about it? Not really, but thanks. She nodded and didn't push. Derek wants to review the integration specs before end of day. You free at 4? Caleb checked the time. 3:15. He was supposed to pick up Maya at 4. Can we do it tomorrow morning? He's going to push back. Then he can push back. My daughter comes first. Rachel smiled. Good answer. Caleb packed up his laptop and headed out, making it to Maya's school with minutes to spare. She came out looking subdued, her backpack dragging on the ground behind her. Hey, Bug. How was your day? Fine. That was never a good sign. Just fine? Yeah. They drove home in relative silence, Maya staring out the window instead of chattering like she usually did. Caleb tried a few conversational openings, asking about her classes, her friends, the upcoming field trip, but got monosyllabic responses. By the time they pulled into the driveway, he knew something was wrong. Inside, Maya dropped her backpack and went straight to her room. Caleb followed and found her sitting on her bed, Gerald clutched to her chest. Maya, talk to me. What's going on? Nothing. Your teacher called. She said you've been quiet lately. Maya's face crumpled. Did I get in trouble? No, sweetheart, no. She's just worried about you. I'm worried about you. He sat on the edge of the bed. Did something happen? Mom didn't call again. There it was, the thing they'd both been pretending not to notice. I know. I'm sorry. Is she mad at me? What? No. Maya, no. Caleb pulled her into a hug. She was small and warm and trembling slightly. Your mom loves you. She's dealing with her own stuff right now. It has nothing to do with you. Then why doesn't she call? I don't know, Bug. I really don't. Maya pulled back, wiping her eyes. Emma's mom calls her every day, even when she's at work. She just calls to say hi. The comparison hurt more than it should have. I know it's not fair. Is it because of the new job? Are you going to stop calling too? Hey, look at me. Caleb waited until she met his eyes. I am never going anywhere. You understand that? I will always be here. Always. No matter what job I have or how busy I get. You come first. Always. Promise? I promise. She nodded, still teary but calmer. Can we have mac and cheese for dinner? The good kind or the box kind? Box kind, with hot dogs. You got it. He made dinner while Maya did homework at the kitchen table, sneaking glances at him every few minutes like she was checking to make sure he was still there. They ate together, and Caleb let her watch an extra 30 minutes of TV because she'd had a hard day, and he felt guilty about all the ways he was failing her even while trying his best. After she went to bed, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and tried to focus on Derek's integration specs. But his mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Mrs. Patterson, to Maya's question about whether he'd stop calling, to the way she'd looked at him, like she needed reassurance that he wasn't going to disappear too. His phone rang. Iris. Hey, bad time? No, I'm just working from home. What's up? The board meeting is Monday. I need to present the revised timeline and convince them it's worth the delay. Any ammunition I can use? Caleb pulled up Rachel's test data. Efficiency improvements? We're seeing 12 to 15% gains across all temperature ranges. That translates to roughly 100 additional miles of range per charge. That's huge. It's measurable, real, the kind of thing investors care about. What else? Long-term reliability? Derek's fast fix approach would get us to market quicker, but we'd start seeing warranty claims within 6 months, potentially catastrophic failures that would cost millions in recalls. My approach takes longer up front but eliminates those risks. Can you quantify the cost difference? Caleb did some quick math. Rough estimate? Derek's approach saves us maybe $3 million in development costs but creates $15 to $20 million in potential recall liability. Mine costs more now but protects us long term. Send me those numbers. I'll build the presentation around them. Will do. And Caleb? Thank you. for all of this. I know it's not easy working with Derek. He's good at what he does. We just have different philosophies. That's diplomatic. I'm trying. She laughed. Get some rest. You sound exhausted. After they hung up, Caleb sent her the data and spent another hour refining the integration specs before his eyes started to blur. He closed the laptop and checked on Maya, fast asleep, Gerald tucked under one arm, then collapsed into his own bed. Sleep came quickly but wasn't restful. He dreamed about timelines and failure cascades and Maya asking why he wasn't there to pick her up from school. He woke at 5:30 feeling like he'd been hit by a truck, dragged himself to the shower, and was making coffee when Maya wandered out in her pajamas. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." "Bad dreams?" "No, just thinking." "About what?" She climbed onto a stool at the counter. "Are you happy with the new job?" "Most of the time, yeah. Why?" "You look tired." Caleb poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "I am tired. It's a lot of work, but it's good work. Important." "More important than me?" The question hit like a physical blow. "No, nothing is more important than you. You know that, right?" Maya shrugged. "You're gone a lot." "I know, and I'm sorry, but it's temporary. Once we get through this big project, things will calm down." "That's what you said at the last job." She wasn't wrong. He'd said the same thing 6 months ago, a year ago, every time he took on extra work to make ends meet. The difference was that this time, he actually believed it. If they pulled this off, if the X7 platform succeeded, he'd have job security and financial stability and the ability to say no to projects that required sacrificing time with his daughter. But explaining that to a 6-year-old felt impossible. "I'm trying, Bug. I really am." "I know." She looked down at the counter. "I just miss you." "I miss you too." He made her favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes that were probably 90% chocolate chips, and they ate together before he dropped her at school. She hugged him extra tight before getting out of the truck. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart. I'll pick you up on time today. I promise." He kept that promise, clearing his afternoon schedule and leaving the office at 3:30, despite Derek's protests about the integration review. Maya's face lit up when she saw him waiting in the pickup line, and that alone made it worth whatever friction it created at work. They spent the evening together. Homework, dinner, a board game. Maya won by a suspicious margin that suggested she might have been making up rules as she went. Caleb didn't call her on it. Let her win. Let her be happy. There was enough losing in the world without making a 6-year-old play fair at Candyland. After she went to bed, he forced himself to tackle the integration review. Derek had left detailed notes, critical but constructive, highlighting potential weak points in Caleb's approach without being condescending. It was the first time they'd collaborated without underlying hostility, and Caleb found himself grudgingly impressed by Derek's thoroughness. He sent back revisions and a note. Good catches. Updated specs attached. Derek's response came 15 minutes later. Better. Let's meet Monday to finalize. Not warm, but professional. Progress. The weekend passed in a blur of household maintenance and quality time with Maya. They went to the park, got ice cream, watched a movie that was ostensibly for kids but had enough clever jokes to keep Caleb entertained. Sunday evening, Maya's phone rang. She looked at the screen, eyes widening. "It's Mom." "Go ahead, answer it." Maya grabbed the phone and ran to her room. Caleb heard her voice through the door, excited, hopeful, talking a mile a minute about school and the field trip and her new friend who had a pet turtle. The call lasted 20 minutes. When Maya came out, she was smiling. "She said she's sorry she hasn't called. She's been really busy with work." Caleb managed a smile. "I'm glad she called. She wants to visit next month for my birthday." "That would be great." Maya's expression faltered slightly. "Do you think she'll really come?" "I don't know, Bug. I hope so." That night, after Maya fell asleep, Caleb texted Claire. "Thanks for calling." It meant a lot to her. No response. He hadn't really expected one. Monday morning arrived with the weight of expectation. The board meeting was at 2. Iris had sent him the presentation deck over the weekend, polished, professional, built around the data he'd provided. The numbers made a compelling case. Whether the board would accept it was another question entirely. Caleb spent the morning in back-to-back meetings with the engineering team, reviewing progress and addressing problems. The thermal management redesign was ahead of schedule. Power distribution was on track. Integration was the bottleneck. Too many dependencies, too many variables. He spent 3 hours with Derek and Rachel, mapping out every possible failure point and building contingency plans. "We're going to make this work," Rachel said as they wrapped up. "We don't have a choice," Derek replied. At 1:30, Iris stopped by Caleb's desk. "Board meeting starting soon. I want you there." "Why? I'm not presenting." "No, but you're the reason we have a viable path forward. If they have questions about the technical approach, I need you to answer them." The boardroom was on the top floor. Glass walls, expensive furniture, a view that stretched across the entire city. 6 board members sat around the table, all of them older, most of them looking skeptical before the presentation even started. Caleb sat in a chair along the wall, trying to be invisible. Iris presented for 30 minutes, walking through the timeline, the cost analysis, the performance improvements. She was confident, articulate, backed up every claim with data. When she finished, the board was quiet for a moment. Then the chairman, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost more than Caleb's truck, leaned forward. "This is impressive work, but you're asking us to accept a significant timeline extension based on the recommendations of someone who's been with the company for less than 2 weeks. Iris didn't flinch. "I'm asking you to accept a timeline extension based on data that proves our current approach is unsustainable. Data from controlled tests, real-world performance could be different, which is why we're building in testing time. But the fundamental improvements are measurable and replicable." Another board member spoke up, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. "What happens if we don't extend the timeline? What's the worst-case scenario?" Iris hesitated. Caleb could see her weighing how honest to be. He stood up. "May I?" The chairman looked annoyed but gestured for him to continue. Caleb walked to the front of the room. "Worst case? You ship vehicles that work beautifully for 3 months, then start failing in ways that are expensive to diagnose and impossible to fix in the field. Customers lose confidence. Media picks up the story. Your stock price tanks. Within a year, you're looking at a class action lawsuit and potential bankruptcy." The room went silent. The chairman's expression darkened. "That's a pretty dire prediction. It's a realistic one. I've seen this exact scenario play out before. Different company, similar mistakes. They prioritize speed over stability. 2 years later, they didn't exist anymore." "And your solution is to slow down?" "My solution is to build it right the first time. Yes, that takes longer, but the alternative is building it wrong quickly and spending years trying to fix it while your reputation burns." The woman board member looked at Iris. "You trust his assessment?" "Completely. He saved our product launch. He's identified problems the entire engineering team missed. And his approach is backed by data, not intuition." The chairman leaned back, studying Caleb. "You're putting a lot on the line for someone who just got here." "I'm putting everything on the line," Caleb said, "because I believe we can do this. And because I've got a 6-year-old daughter who deserves a father with a stable job and a company that isn't about to collapse." That seemed to land. The chairman exchanged glances with the other board members, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, he said, 10 weeks, not a day more. Miss that deadline, and we revisit everything, including personnel." Iris nodded. "Understood." The meeting adjourned. Caleb followed Iris out, his heart still racing. Once they were in the elevator, she turned to him. "That was either really brave or really stupid." "Probably both. You basically told them the company would fail if they didn't listen to you." "I told them the truth. They can do what they want with it." Iris laughed, sharp and slightly manic. "We have 10 weeks. 10. No extensions. No excuses." "Then we better get to work." They spent the rest of the afternoon mobilizing the team, communicating the board's decision, and adjusting work assignments to account for the compressed timeline. By the time Caleb left to pick up Maya, his head was pounding and his hands were shaking from too much coffee and not enough food. Maya was quiet on the drive home. When they pulled into the driveway, she said, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" "Yeah, Bug, we're going to be fine." "You promise?" He looked at her, small and worried and trusting him completely. "I promise." She nodded, apparently satisfied. But as they walked into the house, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a promise he might not be able to keep. 10 weeks turned into a countdown that lived in everyone's head. Caleb saw it in the way Derek checked his watch constantly, in the dark circles under Rachel's eyes, in the way junior engineers started bringing sleeping bags to the office. The garage became a second home, fluorescent lights humming at 2 in the morning while teams ran diagnostics, fixed problems, created new ones, and fixed those too. Week 3 brought the first major crisis. The power distribution redesign that Derek had sworn would work started showing thermal spikes during sustained high-speed operation. Not catastrophic, but enough to trigger safety shutdowns. Caleb found Derek in the garage at midnight, staring at the prototype like it had personally betrayed him. "It should work," Derek said without looking up. "The math is perfect. The simulation's all passed. Math doesn't account for manufacturing variances," Caleb said, pulling up the diagnostic data on a nearby monitor. "Look here. The power regulators are all slightly different specs, with intolerance individually, but when you string them together, the cumulative variance creates resonance. So what do? Tighter tolerances on the components, or we redesign the distribution algorithm to compensate for variance." Derek rubbed his face. "Tighter tolerances means delays from suppliers. Weeks, probably. Then we redesign the algorithm. That's my work. My system." "I know." Derek looked at him. "You're not going to tell me I was wrong?" "You weren't wrong. You just didn't account for something nobody could have predicted without real-world testing. That's why we test." Something shifted in Derek's expression. Not quite gratitude, but close. "Help me redesign it?" They worked until 4 in the morning, sitting side by side at a single monitor, arguing about implementation details and occasionally agreeing. By dawn, they had a solution. Not perfect, but functional. Derek ran the first test while Caleb went home to shower and change before Maya woke up. He made it back just as she was getting ready for school. "You smell like coffee and car garage," she said. "That's because I basically live in a car garage now." "When does the project end?" 7 more weeks." She counted on her fingers. "That's my birthday." Caleb's stomach dropped. He'd been so focused on the timeline that he'd forgotten. Maya's 7th birthday was 3 days after the deadline. "I know, Bug, and I promise we'll do something special." "Can we go to the science museum, the one my class went to?" "Absolutely, whatever you want." She hugged him. "Okay, but you have to promise you won't forget." "I won't forget." But even as he said it, he wondered if that was another promise he couldn't keep. Week 5 brought unexpected progress. Rachel's thermal management system was performing beyond projections. The integration module, Caleb's original design with minor optimizations, was stable across all test conditions. Even the regenerative braking that had been inconsistent for months was suddenly working smoothly. For the first time since the project started, they were actually ahead of schedule on some deliverables. Iris called a team meeting to celebrate. Pizza, beer for those who wanted it, and an actual moment to breathe. Caleb stood in the back of the room, watching his team, and it felt like his team now, even the ones who'd initially resisted, laugh and argue and share war stories from the past 5 weeks. Derek walked over holding a soda. "We might actually pull this off. Don't jinx it. I'm serious. The numbers are good. Really good. Better than anything we projected. We still have 5 weeks. A lot can go wrong." "When did you become the pessimist?" Caleb smiled. "When I realized how much is riding on this." Derek was quiet for a moment. "I was wrong about you. When you first got here, I thought you were just some contractor who got lucky. But you know what you're doing, and you actually listen to people. That's rare." "So do you. When you stop trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room." Derek laughed. "Fair enough." Rachel joined them, holding a slice of pizza. "Are you two actually getting along, or is this the beer talking?" "We're not drinking," Caleb said. "Then it's a miracle." She raised her pizza slice in mock toast. 2 unlikely alliances and vehicles that might actually work. They clinked soda cans and pizza slice, and for a moment the weight of the deadline felt manageable. The moment didn't last. Week 7 brought a failure that nobody saw coming. One of the prototypes, the silver one Caleb had driven during initial testing, suffered a complete power system collapse during a routine test drive. No warning, no gradual degradation. 1 second it was operating normally, the next it was dead on the highway with the driver stranded and furious. The emergency meeting happened at 6 in the morning. The entire team crammed into the conference room, everyone looking exhausted and worried. Iris stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. What happened? Derek pulled up the diagnostic log. Catastrophic failure in the primary power conduit. It just ruptured. Complete loss of electrical connectivity. Why? We don't know yet. The component passed all stress tests. There's no reason it should have failed. Caleb leaned forward, studying the log. Something about the failure pattern looked familiar. Pull up the manufacturing records for that conduit. Derek navigated through files. Here, produced 6 weeks ago. Batch number 773. What other components came from that batch? Let me check. Derek's face went pale. All 3 prototypes. Every primary conduit came from the same manufacturing run. Then we need to replace all of them, now. That's 3 days of work minimum, Rachel said, per vehicle. Iris closed her eyes. We have 3 weeks left. If we pull engineers to replace conduits, we'll miss other deadlines. If we don't replace them, we risk more failures, Caleb said, potentially during the final demonstration for investors. The room went silent. Everyone knew what that would mean. Another public failure, another destroyed reputation, game over. Do it, Iris said. Replace every conduit from that batch. I'll handle the timeline with the board. The next 72 hours were brutal. Teams working around the clock in shifts, carefully removing failed components and installing replacements, testing and retesting every connection. Caleb barely left the garage. He slept in his truck for a few hours each night, grabbed food from the vending machines, and kept his phone charged so he could call Maya before bedtime. Are you okay, Daddy? She asked on the second night. I'm tired, Bug, but I'm okay. You sound sad. Just worried about work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Mrs. Chen said you're working really hard. Mrs. Chen's right. Are you still going to come to my birthday? I wouldn't miss it for anything. Promise? Promise. After they hung up, Caleb sat in his truck and stared at the garage entrance. The fluorescent lights inside looked harsh and uninviting. He thought about walking away, about calling Iris and telling her to find someone else, about taking Maya and just leaving, finding a normal job with normal hours and a life that didn't require sacrificing everything. But then he thought about the work they'd done, the problems they'd solved, the team that had come together despite the odds. Walking away now would mean all of it was for nothing. He went back inside. By week 8, they had all 3 prototypes operational again. The replacement conduits were holding. The power distribution system was stable. Thermal management was performing above spec. Integration was seamless. They were actually back on track. But the team was falling apart. Sarah, one of the senior engineers, turned in her resignation. I can't do this anymore. I have kids I haven't seen awake in 3 weeks. This isn't sustainable. 2 junior engineers followed her out the door, then one of the mechanics. The team that had been 23 people was now 19, and the remaining members were running on fumes and spite. Iris gathered everyone in the garage on a Saturday morning. They all looked terrible, unwashed, exhausted, holding coffee, like it was the only thing keeping them upright. I know this is hard, she said, harder than anyone should have to deal with. But we're almost there. 2 weeks, 14 days. Then we demonstrate these vehicles to the investors. And if they work, when they work, we secure the funding that keeps this company alive and all of you employed. And if they don't work, someone asked, then we all look for new jobs together. Iris's voice was steady but honest. I'm not going to lie to you. This is everything. But I also want you to know that I see what you're doing. I see the sacrifices. And when this is over, we're going to make it right. Time off. Bonuses. Whatever you need. But right now, I need you to hold on for 2 more weeks. Nobody walked out. That alone felt like a victory. The final test started on week 9. Full operational demonstration simulating every condition the vehicles would face during the investor presentation. City driving, highway speeds, extreme temperatures, rapid acceleration, and braking, sustained operation. Every scenario they could imagine, they tested. The vehicles performed flawlessly. Caleb watched the data streams, waiting for something to go wrong, but nothing did. The efficiency numbers held steady. The power distribution was smooth. The thermal management adapted seamlessly to changing conditions. Everything worked exactly as designed. I don't trust it, Derek said, standing beside him. It's too perfect. It's not perfect. Look at the minor variations in regenerative braking efficiency. It's still not optimal, but it's good enough. Yeah, it is. Rachel joined them, tablet in hand. Final test sequence complete. All systems nominal. We're ready. Caleb felt something release in his chest. Tension he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. We actually did it. Don't celebrate yet, Iris said, appearing from nowhere. The investor demonstration is in 5 days, plenty of time for things to go wrong. But nothing went wrong. The days leading up to the demonstration were oddly calm. Final checks and minor adjustments, but no crises. No catastrophic failures. No emergency meetings at 2 in the morning. The team used the time to catch up on sleep, see their families, remember what normal life felt like. Caleb picked Maya up from school every day that week. They had dinner together. He helped with homework. Read her 3 chapters every night instead of 1. She didn't ask about work, and he didn't bring it up. They just existed together, and it felt like something he'd been missing without realizing it. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? You seem happier. I am happier. Because work is done? Because I get to spend time with you. She hugged him. I like this better. Me too. The morning of the demonstration, Caleb woke up before his alarm. He made breakfast, got Maya ready for school, and dropped her off with a promise to pick her up early so they could start her birthday weekend. You're going to do great today, Maya said before getting out of the truck. How do you know? Because you always do. He watched her walk into the school, backpack bouncing, and felt something shift. Win or lose today, he'd already gotten something valuable back. Time with his daughter. Perspective. The understanding that work mattered, but it wasn't everything. The investor demonstration was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Same venue as the original launch, but this time everything was planned and tested and ready. 3x7 prototypes sat on the main floor, gleaming under spotlights. The engineering team stood along the sidewall, trying to look confident. Iris was at the podium in a different blazer but the same determined expression. 50 investors filled the seats. Some of them had been at the original launch. Some were new, brought in specifically to see if Vanguard could actually deliver. The energy in the room was skeptical, but curious. Ladies and gentlemen, Iris began, 3 months ago, we stood in this room and experienced a very public failure. Today, we're here to show you what we built from that failure. She didn't sugarcoat it, didn't pretend the original launch hadn't been a disaster. Instead, she owned it, explained what had gone wrong, and walked through everything the team had done to fix it, the redesign, the testing, the improvements. She credited Caleb by name, along with Derek and Rachel and every engineer who'd sacrificed sleep and sanity to make this work. Then she invited investors to test drive the vehicles. For the next 3 hours, people cycled through. They drove the prototypes around a closed course that included hills, sharp turns, high-speed straightaways. They pushed the vehicles hard, trying to break them. The vehicles didn't break. Every test came back positive. Every drive ended with impressed expressions and interested questions. Caleb stood with his team, watching it all happen, barely breathing. Derek stood next to him, arms crossed, trying to look casual, but clearly nervous. Rachel kept checking her tablet, monitoring the vehicle's diagnostics in real time. Everything's holding, she whispered. Keep watching. I am. Everything's perfect. By the end of the demonstration, the lead investor, the woman from the board who'd asked about worst-case scenarios, approached Iris with 3 other investors behind her. We want to fund the full production run, double what you originally requested. Iris's professional mask slipped for just a second. Double? You delivered exactly what you promised. That's rare. We want to be part of what comes next. The room erupted in applause. The engineering team cheered. Derek grabbed Caleb in a hug that was probably supposed to be a handshake, but turned into something more genuine. Rachel was crying and not bothering to hide it. Iris caught Caleb's eye across the room and mouthed, "Thank you." He nodded back, too overwhelmed to speak. The celebration afterward was loud and chaotic. Investors mingled with engineers, everyone talking at once, champagne flowing, the weight of 10 weeks finally lifting. Caleb stayed for an hour, accepted congratulations from people whose names he'd already forgotten, and then slipped out early. He had a birthday to plan. The next morning, Caleb and Maya went to the Science Museum. She dragged him through every exhibit, asking questions he didn't know the answers to, touching interactive displays until the security guard gave them a warning look. They ate lunch in the cafeteria, overpriced pizza that Maya declared the best she'd ever had, and spent another 2 hours exploring before her energy finally ran out. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat, clutching a stuffed atom she'd begged for in the gift shop. Caleb looked at her in the rearview mirror and felt something settle in his chest. This was what mattered, not the demonstrations or the investors or the praise. This. That evening, after Maya's small birthday party with 3 friends and too much cake, after the presents were opened and the friends were picked up and the living room was a disaster of wrapping paper, Maya climbed onto the couch next to Caleb. "Best birthday ever," she said. "Yeah? Yeah, you were here the whole time. I promised I would be." "I know, but you kept the promise. That's different." Caleb hugged her. "I'm going to keep more promises from now on." "Like what?" "Like being here more, working less, making sure you know you're the most important thing in my life." "More important than cars?" "Way more important than cars." She grinned. "Good." Monday morning, Caleb walked into the office to find a crowd gathered around his desk. Iris stood in the center holding an envelope. "There he is," she said. "We've been waiting for you." "What's going on?" "The board met over the weekend. They approved something I've been pushing for since the demonstration." She handed him the envelope. "Open it." Inside was a letter on official Vanguard letterhead. Caleb scanned it quickly, then read it again more slowly. It was a promotion, not just senior engineer, partner, partial equity in the company, a seat at the table for major decisions. "I don't understand," Caleb said. "You saved this company. Twice. First at the launch, then during the overhaul. You didn't just fix the vehicles. You fixed how we work, how we think about problems. The board agrees that you should have a stake in what we're building." Derek stepped forward. "For what it's worth, I supported this. You earned it." Rachel hugged him. "Congratulations. You deserve this." Caleb looked at the letter again, at his name printed in formal typeface above the title Partner. He thought about the past 3 months, the long nights and impossible deadlines and moments when failure seemed inevitable. He thought about Maya asking if he'd keep his promises, about realizing that success meant nothing if he lost what mattered while chasing it. "I accept," he said, "on one condition." Iris raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "Normal hours. I'll lead projects and make strategic decisions, but I won't sacrifice time with my daughter. If that's not acceptable, I'll stay where I am." Iris smiled. "That's already part of the deal. I told the board that work-life balance was non-negotiable. You're a better engineer when you're not exhausted and miserable. So yeah, normal hours. Family first." Caleb felt something release that he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Then yes, absolutely yes." The team cheered. Someone started a chant of his name that was embarrassing but also kind of amazing. Derek shook his hand formally, then pulled him into another hug. "Don't screw this up," Derek said. "I'll do my best." Over the following weeks, things settled into a new normal. The X7 prototypes went into full production. Orders started coming in from dealerships and early adopters. The reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Vanguard's stock price climbed. Iris was featured in 3 major tech publications. The engineering team got the time off and bonuses they'd been promised. Caleb moved into a real office with a door and windows and a view of the city. He hired 2 new engineers to help manage the workload. He implemented a policy that no one worked past 6 unless there was a genuine emergency. The team initially resisted. They'd gotten used to the grind. But within a month, people were leaving on time and coming back refreshed instead of exhausted. Derek stopped by his office one afternoon, looking uncomfortable. "What's up?" Caleb asked. "I wanted to apologize for how I acted when you first got here. I was territorial and defensive and kind of an ass." "Kind of?" Derek smiled. "Okay, completely an ass. But I was scared. Scared that you'd make me irrelevant. Scared that everything I'd built would get torn down. I never wanted to tear anything down, just fix what was broken. I know that now. And I wanted you to know that I respect what you did. Not just the technical work, but how you handled people, how you listened. I'm trying to be better at that." "You're doing fine. We all are." Derek left, and Caleb sat at his desk, looking out at the city. He thought about where he'd been a few months ago, broke, overlooked, wondering if things would ever change. He thought about the moment at the launch when he could have walked away, taken Maya home, forgotten about the failing vehicle and the company in crisis. He'd made a choice that night, to step forward, to offer help, to believe that his knowledge and experience mattered, even when nobody else seemed to think so. That choice had changed everything. 3 months later, Maya's teacher called again, this time with better news. I wanted to let you know that Maya's doing wonderful. She's engaged in class, making friends, participating in everything. Whatever changed at home, it's working. Thank you for letting me know. She talks about you a lot, about the things you do together. You're doing a great job, Mr. Hayes. This time, the words felt earned. That weekend, Caleb took Maya to the Vanguard headquarters. She'd been asking to see where he worked, and he'd finally arranged a visit. He showed her the garage, the prototypes, the engineering floor. She was fascinated by everything, asking questions and touching equipment until Rachel gently redirected her. This is where you fix the car? Maya asked, standing next to the X7 from the launch event. This is where we fixed a lot of things. Do you like working here? I do. But you know what I like more? What? Going home to you every night. She grinned. Good answer. On the drive home, Maya asked, Daddy, what's the most important thing you learned from your job? Caleb thought about it, about the failures and successes, the conflicts and collaborations, the moments when everything seemed impossible, and the moments when it all came together. That being overlooked doesn't mean being worthless, he said finally. Sometimes people don't see your value because they're not looking in the right place, but that doesn't change who you are or what you can do. You just have to believe in yourself long enough for others to catch up. That's a lot of words. Yeah, basically, don't let other people decide what you're capable of. You decide that. Maya was quiet for a moment. Like when Emma said I couldn't climb to the top of the jungle gym because I'm too small? Exactly like that. And then I climbed it anyway. And then you climbed it anyway. She nodded, satisfied. I get it. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence. When they got home, Maya went to her room to play, and Caleb sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the evening light filter through the windows. His phone buzzed. A text from Iris. Board approved the new development project. Want you leading it. Interested? Caleb looked toward Maya's room, where he could hear her talking to Gerald about something important. He thought about the promise he'd made to himself and to her, about priorities and balance, and knowing when to say yes and when to say no. He typed back, interested, but I'll need to see the timeline and scope first, and I'm not working weekends. Iris's response came quickly. Deal. Let's talk Monday. Caleb set the phone down and smiled. He had a job that challenged him, a daughter who loved him, a team that respected him, a future that looked nothing like the uncertain, desperate past he'd been living just months ago. He wasn't perfect. The apartment was still messy. Bills were still bills. Maya's mother still barely called. Work was still demanding. Life was still complicated. But he'd learned something that mattered more than perfection. He'd learned that showing up mattered, that offering help mattered, that believing your skills had value, even when nobody else seemed to, could change everything. The car he'd fixed that night hadn't just saved a company. It had saved him, too. Reminded him that he was more than just someone who patched other people's mistakes. He was someone who solved real problems, who built things that lasted, who mattered. And that was enough. Maya called from her room, asking if they could make spaghetti for dinner. Caleb called back that they absolutely could. And would she like to help? She came running out, Gerald under one arm, ready for whatever came next. Caleb stood up, ready too. Outside, the city moved forward, cars on streets, people in buildings, the constant hum of life continuing. Inside, a father and daughter made dinner together, talked about nothing important, and built the kind of ordinary moment that turned out to be everything. Sometimes the biggest victories weren't the ones everyone saw. Sometimes they were quiet, personal. The kind that happened in kitchens and bedrooms and car rides home, the kind that reminded you why you fought so hard in the first place. Caleb stirred the sauce, listened to Maya's story about her friend's pet hamster, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Content. Not perfect. Not finished. Not without problems. But content. And that, he'd learned, was exactly what winning actually looked like.